brings down a merit Gevart. He says a klal. The klal is that ein kateger nasas aneger. The persecutor cannot become the defendant. What was the one that caused that the Averis of Yom Kippur, the Averis that a person did on Yom Kippur are Averis? The Kedusha of Yom Kippur, the holiness of Yom Kippur. That Kedusha itself can't be mechaper for those Averis. Ein kateger nasas aneger. The Kedusha of Yom Kippur can't be mechaper for the Averis that are done on Yom Kippur. That's very interesting. There's a few other halachas which have the same beer. For example, if a person says, Echte v'ashuv, I'll do an Aveir and then I'll do tshuva afterwards. We say, in maspikim biyadi lasses tshuva. We don't allow you to do tshuva. Why? Very simple. Because you planned on doing tshuva and that was what caused you to do the Aveira. The geirem, the cause, can't be the solution to the issue. We say, if someone says, Echte v'yem kippur mechaper, I'll do an Aveir and Yom Kippur is going to help me out. Doesn't work. Same issue. So the Rogatchover says over here that on all Averis Yom Kippur can be mechaper, besides Averis which Yom Kippur itself caused. In the Lashon of Chassidus, Yom Kippur is Megala, the connection that a Yid has to the Eibusha, the unconditional connection that we have to Hashem, a connection of our Etzem HaNeshama. Nothing can get in the way of that connection. All Averis don't exist over there. But the Averis of Yom Kippur are Seiser. They contradict bringing alive that connection. They contradict bringing out that connection. And therefore, those Averis can get in the way. So, let's go back to Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why was it that after Yidden did so many Averis, nevertheless, they were able to be redeemed from Mitzrayim? But if a Yid didn't want to leave, he wanted to remain in Golos, he wanted to remain Avadai to Pare, that Aveira was strong enough to keep him in Mitzrayim. Very simple. Any other Aveira, the Eibishter he overlooked. He said, now is the time of Banim Lamakim, B'ni B'cheri Yisrael. But if a Yid is being Seiser, that connection itself, he's going against that very connection that Hashem wants to redeem him as a child, so there's nothing that can be done. He remains in Mitzrayim. The obvious question is, so then why is Mashiach any different? Why is the Gula Asidah any different? L'cheira again, a Yid can be safe to that connection that we have, say he doesn't want to go out of Golos, and he'll remain in Golos. So the answer to this lies in what the Chiddush of Matan Torah is all about. There were two main Chiddushim of Matan Torah. Number one, Matan Torah was the time that the Eibishter chose Yidden. The Eibishter was Beicher in every single Yid. In addition to being a child, a ben to the Eibishter was Beicher in us. This is halacha mufareshes, brought in the Alter Rebbe, Siman Samach. The Alter Rebbe says that when you say in davening, Uvonu v'chartam yikolam v'loshin, you're supposed to think Matan Torah. That was when the Eibishter chose us. The second chiddush of Matan Torah is that we became avodim to the Eibishter. We became servants of the Eibishter. And we know the pasuk says, the Eibishter says, I took out Yidin, tavdun el alikim el har hazeh, in order to serve me on this mountain. The Gemara in Kiddushin says that when we give the martzeya to the Eved that wants to stay over the 6 years, we put it in his ear. Why do we put it in his ear, Dafka? So the Gemara says, the B'yechon Medakai said, we tell him, Eizin sheshamat al Har Sinai, the ear which heard on Har Sinai, that avodim, that Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim, the Yidden are my servants, is now going to go and find his own master, find a different master. So we see that Dafka on Har Sinai, we were told Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim. Now, obviously, these two things are connected. These two things go hand in hand. This that Hashem chose us and this that we're avodim go hand in hand. Now, there's the last Maramokim on your page. It's a Meredith Rashi. The Rashi says on the pasuk, Ki am kadesh ata l'Hashem leikecha uvecho bachar Hashem. Rashi says, Ki am kadesh ata kedushas atzmecha ma'avesecha. Every day there's a kedusha. Ve'oid uvecho bachar Hashem. In addition to that, Hashem chose us. Which means in addition to being children of the Eibishter, there's something deeper here, that Hashem chose us as well. Now we know regarding Bechira Chavshis, we know that true Bechira Chavshis, true free choice, is when there's nothing being machiach the person. There's nothing forcing the person. And we're very used to thinking that it means nothing outside is forcing. But it means more than that. It means there's nothing at all forcing, which means both not any milus, any advantages. If I'm choosing something because it has a pull, because there's something to it, there's a reason why I'm choosing it, so that reason itself is pulling me. That's not emes bechira. Real bechira can only be found when it comes entirely from the beicher, entirely from the chooser. It comes from the eye of a person. The part of a person which is beyond any milus, any advantages, any reasons. I chose just because. So when we say that the Eibishter chose us by our Sinai, what we mean in other words is the Eibishter chose us not because there's a certain natural connection, not because there's certain advantages that a Yid has, not because of the milus of a Yid, but the Eibishter chose the Yid himself. Obviously that translates to the thing that he chose. Why did he choose it? If he didn't choose it for the milus, or he didn't choose it for what it brings out, so then he chose the thing itself, the very etzem, the very essence of the thing. And that's why the Avodah that started by Matan Torah wasn't just the Avodah of Banim, which already existed before, but was the Avodah of Avodah Hayim, the Avodah of being an Eved to Hashem. Because an Eved is the same idea. The Yachas that an Eved has to his master, to his Adin, is one that has nothing to do with his nature, nothing to do with his qualities, nothing to do with what he's interested in, but it's purely that the Adin, so to speak, chose him. And that reaches the very essence of the Eved. Now, Pisa, we can understand the difference between Yitzias Mitzrayim and the Gula Asida. When it came to Yitzias Mitzrayim, we said, though Yidin are B'ni B'cheri Yisroel, and the Eibishter said, I'm going to redeem every Yid, nevertheless, like the Ragachover said, if you're Seiser, that Gilui, Ein Kategan Asas Anegar. In other words, to be a child is very deep. It's a very deep connection. But there's something deeper. The bechira of a person. And that is able to negate that connection. If a Yid decides and chooses, I want to remain in Mitzrayim, Rachman al-Etzlan, he can remain. But once the Eibishter chose a Yid by Har Sinai, the Eibishter turned to every single Yid and said, I am choosing you, I am your Eibishter. So the Eibishter reached the core of every single Yid. There's nothing deeper. Ad Kedei Kach, the Maharal brings down in the Sefer Gvuras Hashem and Netzach Yisroel, he says that because of that, a Yid is be'etzem teiv. The essence of a Yid is teiv. And any ra, anything else which comes on a Yid is a davar neisif, is an additive on that. And that's why the Rambam says, Parak Beis of Hilchos Geirish, and the Rambam says that every single Yid is reitza, las is kol ha-Torah. Yid wants to do the whole Torah. Because that is the very core of a Yid. There's nothing deeper than that, and a Yid cannot be safe to that connection. And therefore, when it comes to the Gula Asida, we're guaranteed that V'shavta, Hashem lekecha, Shvuscha, the Eibishter is going to do kibbutz golis of every single Yid, V'atem, to look to Echad of Bnei Yisrael. It should be taken from Yad Mamash.
Thank you, Mendel. We now have the distinct privilege to hear a few words from our Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Cohen.
Normally by the Kinus Torah speak an Inyan in Hilchos Talmud Torah. That's what Kinus Torah is all about, the Inyan of Talmud Torah. To choose a halach in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Talmud Torah, the first published work of the Alter Rebbe, and discuss this Inyan. It's in Perek Beis, Halacha Yud Beis. The Alter Rebbe speaks about the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, the mitzvah of learning Torah, which he says, as he says there, at the beginning of Perek Beis, the chiyuv of Talmud Torah is learned out from the posuk in Dvarim, U'lemadatem oisom, you should learn them, U'shmartem la'asoison, and you should keep them, to do them. Zu mitzvah sasei shel Talmud Torah al kol odom la'atzmei. This is the mitzvah sasei of Talmud Torah which every person has for himself. Lilmeid kol ha-Torah shebiksav v'shebal peh kula, to learn the whole of Torah shebiksav and the whole of Torah shebal peh. This is a mitzvah shaykh to each and every person, obviously. In the end of the perek, in Halacha Yud Beis, the Alter Rebbe goes and is mechadish, an interesting prat in this, how to be mekayim the mitzvah of ulamadatem oisom, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Says the Alter Rebbe, v'chol odom tzorich lizoher lohitzi bisvosov. A person has to be careful when learning Torah, lohitzi bisvosov, to use his lips, to say the words which he is learning with his lips as he learns them. Ulahashmiya lo'oznov, not just lohitzi bisvosov, to say the words, but also to hear lo'oznov, his ears should hear what he is saying. Kol ma shelimed, everything which he learns. Bein b'mikra mishnah v'talmud, no difference. Torah shebiksav, Torah shebal peh, no difference. You have to say the words and hear the words. And then he says after that, V'chol ma shelimed b'hiro levad, everything which a person learns just in his mind, just thinking the words as he learns them. Ve'ef sheloi lohitzi bisvosov, he could say the words, ve'eina meitzi, but he doesn't say them, he's just thinking. Eina yotze belimud zeh, with this learning, with such a learning just in his mind, he's not yotze yedei chayvas mitzvahs ulamadatem oisam, you're not yotze the mitzvah with this. He brings a posuk to be meicher this, to prove this. There's a diak which they make in the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe over here, very interesting, and that is that at the beginning when he said you need, the way you're supposed to learn, he said you've got to be careful, lahitzi bisvosov ulahashmiya la'oznov. You've got to be careful to say the words as you learn them, and to hear what you're saying. That he said by tzorich, that's the way the mitzvah is supposed to be done. 2 lines later, when he says about you're not being yotze, a person who ef shaloi lohitzi bisvosov, ve'eina meitzi, if you didn't say the words, on that he says, eina yotze belimud zeh, you're not yotze with that. You could have said the words, you didn't say the words, you're not yotze. L'cheira, he should have said a bigger chiddush. Instead of just saying, if you didn't say the words, and you just had it in your machshava, you are not yotze, he should have said, even if you did say the words, but you didn't hear what you said, you're also not yotze. Doesn't say that. When he spoke about lechatchila, he said you need to be lohitzi bisvosov ulashmiya la'oznov. When he speaks about b'di'eved, when you've done it already, with la'acha ma'isa, then he says, if you didn't say the words, you're not yotze, the mitzvah. Mashma, that if you did say the words, even if you didn't hear what you said, nevertheless, you're still yotze b'di'eved. So it's mashma. And that means that what he said at the beginning of the halacha, that tzorech lahashmiya la'oznov, you need to hear what you're saying, is lecheira mashma from that was only lechatchila that was said. But it's not ma'akev b'di'eved. Ma'akev b'di'eved is saying the words. Ma'akev b'di'eved is not hearing what you say. That's only lechatchila. That's where it's mashma from the Alter Rebbe's words. That's the way our Rav Ashkenazi, Yisroel Sholom, is medayik from the words, the mashmos of the words of the Alter Rebbe. Lich'eira, we could say that this is be'emes a befeirish mechabe in Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchas Kriyas Sefer Torah. We could say exactly the same mashmos we find over there in Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, with regard to the mitzvah of Kriyas HaTorah. There, the Mechaber says in Sif Beis, with regard to a person who has an aliyah, he is Oila LaTorah, then there are 2 options. In the Zman HaShas, it used to be that the Oila was Keira. The one who got the aliyah, he read from the Torah. Nowadays, we have, and since not everyone is a baki in reading the Torah themselves, the Oila is not the one who reads. The Shliach Tzibur, the Baal Koreh, is the one who reads from the actual Torah itself. Says the Alter Rebbe, well, one of the two, says the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, one of the two should read, either the Shliach Tzibur or the Oila, not both of them. Both of them shouldn't be reading, only one. Umikol mokem, and nevertheless, tzarich hu likchis ima shliach tzibur, kedei shelo yitei berchosei levatola. The one who gets the aliyah should read together, say the words, together with the shliach tzibur, kedei shelo yitei berchosei levatola, in order that the bracha which he made when he got the aliyah should not be a bracha levatola, which we see straight away then. The first point, like the Alter Rebbe said, you made a bracha on Torah, you've got to say the words. Just thinking will not be enough. Like over here, you had an aliyah l'Torah, you have to say the words. This is the shita of the Mechaber. You have to say the words as you go along. Otherwise, it'll be a bracha levatola. Means you're not yotze the mitzvah. Then the Mechaber adds, Elo shetzorech likchos benachas shelo yashmiya lo'ozno. But the one who gets the aliyah should say the words, but say them quietly. Shelo yashmiya lo'ozno, he says clearly. He shouldn't hear what he is saying. Not only other people shouldn't hear what he is saying. Shelo yashmiya lo'oznov means in Parsha, even he shouldn't hear what he says. It's a simple meaning of the words. He shouldn't hear that which he is saying. He's making a bracha over here. We're afraid the bracha may be levatola. Therefore we say he has to say the words. Yachad im zeh, the same time we say he shouldn't say it out loud. Because if he's going to say it out loud, it will disturb people. They can't hear two people at once. They can't hear the Baal Koreh and the fellow who had the aliyah. But then Shelo Yashmiya Lo'ozno, he himself can't hear. He says it softly, quietly. The one who has the aliyah says the words together with the Baal Koreh, but Lo Yashmiya Lo'ozno. If you're going to say that just like you need to say the words in order to avoid a bracha levatola, similarly you need to hear what you are saying, then it's not understood over here how you can give a hayra to a person that he should say the words and not hear what he's saying. Doesn't make sense. If you're trying to avoid, if the whole reason to avoid a bracha levatola, then he should say it and hear. He at least should hear what he's saying. The fact that the Mechaber says otherwise makes it clear as a raya Gedolah for that which the Alter Rebbe says, that the saying is what is ma'akev b'di'eved, that is mina Torah, that in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah you have to say the words, not just have hira, just hearing, thinking alone. That's not sufficient. That is mina Torah, you're not yotze if you don't say the words. But that you should have to hear what you're saying, that is only lechatchila, that is not necessary. Mina Torah, mitzad etzem mitzvah, you don't have to hear what the words as you say them, as long as you said the words. And therefore, because of that, in a case where we don't want you to say it out loud, for the simple reason that people, you'll disturb people who are trying to listen to the Baal Koreh, and they'll be hearing you also, that is going to disturb them, and therefore, under those circumstances, Chazal were mavater on that inyan of hearing what you're saying, and they said you should say it quietly in such a way that even you shouldn't hear what you're saying. That muchach from that lichir, like the shita of the Alter Rebbe, that b'di'eved, this is not ma'akev, the kiyum mitzvah of Talmud Torah. All right, that is the way the pashtus, what comes out from the words of the Alter Rebbe. Then the Alter Rebbe adds an inyan, which is a chidush godel, having said that you have to say the words as you learn them. Then the Alter Rebbe says, as we quoted before, if you learn just behira b'levad, you just learn thinking. But you're not going to be yotze. Why? If ef shaloi lohitzi b'svasav, you could say the words. You could have said them, but you didn't say them. Then you're not yotze. What does he mean? Ef shaloi lohitzi b'svasav, implying that if it's not ef shaloi, if you can't say the words, then it doesn't matter. What does he mean? What case is he coming for to exclude over here? Is that which he said a few words earlier? Ele imkein b'shas iyun lohavin dava mitoich dava. When you are learning Torah, b'shas iyun, you're being ma'ayin in your learning, you're thinking it, you're learning lohavin dava mitoich dava. To understand one thing from another in your learning, you're not just saying words. You're thinking about that which you're learning. You're trying to understand the inyan over here. Then it's mashma clearly from the words of the Alter Rebbe, then the whole thing doesn't apply. B'shas iyun, it doesn't matter. You're trying lahovin dova miteich dova. I want to understand this properly. And at the time when a person is involved in his machshava, it is not easy for him then to speak, to talk at such a time. Therefore, because of that, b'shas iyun, we are not mechayev him in that, and it's mashma clearly from the hemshech of the words of the Alter Rebbe that as such, under those circumstances, when you are being ma'ayin lahovin dova miteich dova in your learning, then at such a time you're b'chlal not mechayev lahitzi b'svasov. You don't have to say, you say the words at all. And mashma clearly from the words of the Alter Rebbe, under those circumstances, you are yotze the mitzvah ulamadatem isom. You are yotze the mitzvah with that. He only said, if you could have said the words and you don't say them, then you're not yotze the mitzvah ulamadatem. But if it was b'shas iyun, you're not mechuyev bichlal to say the words. You're yotze anyway the mitzvah ulamadatem isom. This is the poshet of pshat in the words of the Alter Rebbe, which is a chidush gadol ma'od. To understand how could there be such a thing, to say such a thing, that there's a mitzvah. And the mitzvah is bedibur, which that's what he's saying over here. Hirur is not sufficient over here. Hirur lav kedibur domi. Thinking is not sufficient. You need to say the words. All right, there's a mitzvah to say the words as you learn them. All right, the chidush, but we can understand it. No different from other mitzvahs bedibur. But to say then that in a case where you are being ma'ayin, you are torad in your machsheves or iyun, in that which you are learning, to say that at such a time it's all right. Then you don't have to say the words. Why don't you have to say the words? How on earth? And it's mashaf in Alter Rebbe, you're yotze then the mitzvah ulamadatem. How can you be yotze the mitzvah of ulamadatem when you're not saying the words? If the mitzvah is to say the words, that's what we said at the beginning of the sif, you've got to be motzei b'svasov, you have to say the words. A mitzvah b'dibur is therefore, it could be that you are torrid in your machshava, it's extremely difficult for you to say the words, all right. Or something, you're too involved in the iyun adova, you're therefore you can't say the words. But it's mashma clearly from the Alter Rebbe, you're yotze with that olamadatem. How can that be? How can you be yotze the mitzvah bedibur? If there is a mitzvah bedibur, how can you be yotze with machshava ba'alma, just with thinking? Whatever the reason why you find it difficult to say the words, but if the mitzvah is, if this is a mitzvah bedibur, it doesn't make sense. The Rebbe learns over here, in Kama Mekemis, the Rebbe brings down, learns the pshat in the words of the Alter Rebbe, and this is Takamashma, as in many places of the Alter Rebbe, there are two mitzvahs over here, or two chalokim, either two mitzvahs or two chalokim of a mitzvah over here, Talmud Torah. There's a mitzvah ulamadatem, as the Alter Rebbe says, there's a mitzvah b'dibur, to say the words, and unless you say the words, you're not going to be yotze this mitzvah ulamadatem. And there's a mitzvah v'hagisa b'yomim v'layla, which v'hagisa b'achreinu, all the achreinu learn the Mashal of the Alter Rebbe clearly in Siman Pehei also, the mitzvah v'hagisa b'yomim v'layla, hegyon libi. This is an inyan of machshava, v'hagisa b'y, you're yotze the mitzvah v'hagisa b'y, this inyan v'hegyon, an inyan of hegyon libi, with the machshava alone, you're yotze the inyan v'hagisa b'y. All right, I can understand, that's fair enough. But that doesn't mean you're yotze the mitzvah ulamadatem. with just machshava alone. It means that you're torud in the mitzvah of hagisa bay, in an inyan of higoyen, in an inyan of machsheves, hamoyach, v'alev. You're thinking in this inyan. Therefore, because of that, you can't be mekayim now the mitzvah l'madatem. But from the Alter Rebbe's words, is mashma clearly not like that. The Alter Rebbe says clearly, then there's no need at all bichlal to say the words at such a time. And Masha clearly from the Alter Rebbe, you're yotze the mitzvah l'madatem with this inyan of machshava, which this is extremely difficult to understand. Where's ever heard of such a thing? That with all the machshava in the world, you can be yotze mitzvah, which is bedibur, and what would be by kriyashma. The Alter Rebbe says clearly in Tanya, but even he wouldn't say it in Tanya. He says adova haposhet, that what a mitzvah which is bedibur, you can think all the machshavas and his bonus and you like as much as you like. You still will not be yotze the mitzvah until you actually say the words. Say the words of Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Then you'll be yotze. You can be mizbeinen in the inyan from now till next year. In the inyan of Shema Yisroel, you'll not be yotze the mitzvah klal or klal. How could you be? If the mitzvah is bedibur, then how could you be yotze with machshavas, adovar poshet? You can't be yotze with that. So it's mashma over here. I said this because of this. This is a chidush gadol. The mashma is over here that despite the fact that the mitzvah is bedibur, afal pikein, nevertheless, you can be yotze this mitzvah if it is b'shas iyun. Lahovin dova mitoich dova. We're trying to understand over here. With that, you are yotze taka still yotze the mitzvah ulamadatem oisam. How are we to be masbir such an inyan? How can that be? As you say, it doesn't make sense to say such a thing if the mitzvah is bedibur. We'd have to answer over here to be machalik between the mitzvah of kriyashma, using kriyashma as just an example of this, to be machalik to distinguish between the mitzvah of kriyashma and the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. By the mitzvah of kriyashma, the mitzvah Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, you have to say the words. And there's no way in the world, no reason in the world, if you don't say the words of Shema Yisroel, the first pasuk Rishon, you'll certainly not be yotze the mitzvah of kriyashma kipshuto min ha'Torah. Absolutely nothing to talk about, nothing to discuss concerning that. Then there's another inyan which there is, and that is the inyan of Shema Yisrael, Shema miloshen havona v'hasaga, the inyan Ayid should be mizbeinen, what he's saying over here, and have the kavonas or inyan, and have his bonus as brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that in the inyan of kriyashma, this is that you need to have kavona in the pasuk Rishon, is not just the pshat mitzad mitzvahs tzrichas kavona. Even according to the man da'omer who holds mitzvahs ein tzrichas kavona, mitzvahs don't need kavona, still you have to have kavona in the first pasuk of kriyashma. The Alter Rebbe is masbif of why is that so? Because there's two sorts of kavona lotzis mitzvah. There's a machlokas, mitzvah srichas kavona, in srichas kavona, there's mitzvah need to have kavona. That's talking about a kavona to be yotze the mitzvah. Do you need to have a kav for that or not? That's a machlokas. But then there's kavona so inyan. What you're saying, the kavona, what you're talking about, the words you're saying over here. Shema Yisrael means you've got to have kavona for the inyan, the meaning of the words as you say them. That is kavona so inyan, different kavona bichlal. That's not the kavona to be yotze the mitzvah. For that, you have to have that inyan of his bonus be mizbein in the meaning of the words that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, you mekabel the Eibishter, mekabel the Malchusei shel HaKodesh Baruch Hu. Those two inyanim are two separate inyanim, taka. Those two mitzvahs, the mitzvah shebedibur, of saying the words of kriyashma, and the mitzvah of being misbeinen in the teichen hadvarim, they are not necessarily the same thing at the same time. The Adrabah, the Psak of the Alter Rebbe, clearly, Shulchan Aruch, based on the Magen Avraham and the Trumas Hadeshen, the Alter Rebbe pasked that inyan, Mayrich be'echad, the inyan of being Mayrich in this inyan of the Eibishter, the Aleph, Ches, Dalet, of Krishma, that inyan, that is after you have said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. then you should be mizbeinen in what you just said. After you said it, after you finish saying it, not when you're saying it, but after you finish saying it, then you are mizbeinen, and that is mashma from that this is, you have to think of the meaning of the Pirush HaMilus, you have to know when you say it. But nevertheless, the etzem mitzvah, the mizbeinen, it should be a Kabbalas Malchus Shemayim, Shlemo, a proper Kabbalas Malchus Shemayim. That's not the same thing as the time when you're saying it. It's a separate inyan. There should be there also. There's dibur and there's machshova, and they are two separate things. And you're not yotze one with the other. They're two separate inyanim. A mitzvah sheba dibur and a mitzvah sheba machshova. Mashen came by Talmud Torah, we could say it's not two separate inyanim. We could say, you could learn the pashtas, that in the inyan of Talmud Torah, why is it that was said you should say the words of Torah? Why is it, and what was the basis of Chazal saying that when Torah just says, Ulamadatem oisam, Torah says, Ulamadatem oisam. Chazal said, well, that means you have to say the words. How do you know it means you have to say the words? It says, Ulamadatem oisam. Who said that means you have to say the words? When does it say you have to say the words? The Chazal say that's what it means. Is a pshat, the Chazal understood that Ulamadatem oisam, that if Torah says you should learn, that learning has to be in an oifen of shlemus. That learning has to be proper, to be the way the mitzvah is supposed to be performed. In order for even b'di ever to be makayim the mitzvah l'madtem over here, there has to be not only just an inyan of machshova. So for gisa b'yom v'laylo is in pashtus, that is the yesod of the inyan, the nekudas inyan of limut HaTorah is for gisa b'yom v'laylo. An inyan of machshova, an inyan of iyun, an inyan of havana v'hasaga. That is the etzem inyan, the etzem nekuda of mitzvahs Talmud Torah. But, as the Gemara says in Eruvin, and in many places, the inyan of imaruchehi, b'chol remach ivorim hi mishtameres. If you say the words, then it'll be guarded by you. And not only be guarded by you, it brought in Chassidus, if you say the words, then you'll understand them better as you say them. But it's not, understanding itself is increased through the saying of the words, that increases. They're not two separate inyanim over here. The inyan of dibur, which needs to be, is that a shleimus of ulamadatem. The shleimus ulamadatem will be when it's not just an inyan b'machshova, but when it's also an inyan b'dibur. At any rate, if we could say, if this is true, I believe it is true, if we could say that this is so, this is be'emes one inyan, two chalokim, in one inyan, in one mitzvah. And the chelek ha'poel of the mitzvah is the dibur. The chelek ha'pnimi, the neshama of the inyan is v'hagisa. The inyan of the machshava is then it's understood. But mokem sheyesh stira between these two chalokim, we go after the ikka inyan, not after the inyan atofel. The inyan of dibur is in order to enhance the understanding. But if that is going to destroy the understanding of the person through the inyan of dibur, then we would go after the ikka in the nekuda ha'ikris, which is the inyan of machshova. At any rate, the Eivishter should help. We should be Mekayim, the Lamadatem, and the inyan of Agisa Bayom of Alayla, and that is the Kavanah of Zman Matan Torah Seinu, and the part of this, the Kavanah of the Kinus Torah also. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. We have the distinct privilege to have with us tonight the Av Bezdin of Melbourne, somebody very close to all of the Smicha Chevres Hats, who's gives us our tests. We're lucky enough to have with us Rabbi Gutnick. If you can please share with us a few words of Torah.
First of all, I'd like to say, can you hear me? I'd like to say that the Yeshiva Gedolah Bochrim who are here, you should know that I was once one of you guys. But I didn't come just I wasn't just here for a year, I was here for 5 years. And that was at the Pekudah of the Rebbe. The Rebbe told me I should stay each year. I used to say, are we there yet? Can I go? And the Rabbi used to tell me not to go. Until after 5 years I was able to go. Unfortunately, I never made it to this building. When I was in Yeshiva Gedolah, we were over there in 11 Meadow Street. And today it's totally different. The original house has been knocked down. But I was there. And so therefore I feel a close affinity, especially as I see so many Yeshiva Gedolah boys here. It is a minhag that at a Kinus, if it's connected with a yontif, such as this Kinus is connected with Shavuos, that we speak somehow on the inyan of the yontif, preferably. I don't know whether everybody's going to do that, but preferably that's the way in which it's done. I looked and thought that, Talmud Torah, Hilchos Talmud Torah, we know a lot about. Rabbi Cohen just gave us a whole shiur on it. And we know a lot about it, and it's been talked about a lot. But there's something else that I believe is connected with Shavuos that I'd like to base my little talk here this evening on. And that's the fact that the first day of Shavuos we read Aseres HaDibros. We read Matan Torah. We read all about the giving of the Torah and learning Torah afterwards and so on. But on the second day of Shavuos, the Kriyas HaTorah, which sums up the theme of that day, is not really on much other than talking about the Yomim Tovim in general, so okay, that's fine. But a different theme, rather than just talking about Yomim Tovim in general, I think is hinted at in the first part that we read. When we read the first part, Kol HaBchor, so there it's talking about giving over gifts to the Cohen. And if it's Shabbos, and if you have a look in your Siddur beforehand, you have to skip a page because it's there. It starts off with Aser Taser. It talks all about the whole concept of giving a Maisa. So I'd like to talk this evening and to pick up on that theme, the concept of tzedakah. And I think it's also referenced in the Sedra that we read yesterday as well. Today. Yesterday Al Pidin, but today in time. And we read the Seder dealing with how the Nasiim gave over so much to the Mishkan that not only are the donations given, but each donation is given over and over again to impress upon the fact that everybody gave, all the Nasiim gave, and the concept of the way they gave is indeed something that's to be marveled and to be thought about. So this concept of tzedakah is something that I think is important, and we all know about tzedakah. We all know we have to give tzedakah and the milas of giving tzedakah and so on. But sometimes we don't really know so much about the halachas of tzedakah, the true halachas, especially of Maisa. I remember when I got married, and everybody who gets married usually gets gifts. And you get a few checks and you get a bit of cash. And I remember at the time that I had this pile of cash, so to speak, checks and so on. And I spoke to my parents and also to my in-laws, and we said, what do we do with this? Baruch Hashem, my wife was teaching, I was in Kollel, and I was getting somewhat of a wage from Kollel. And in general, we didn't really need to use this money now. So they decided, they told me that you should invest it. I said, I should invest it. Maybe there's something better that I can spend it on. So I wrote into the Rebbe, and I said to the Rebbe, I have this money, and my parents tell me that I should invest it, and they even told me what I should invest it in, and I wrote that all into the Rebbe, and I asked the Rebbe, should I to invest this money as my parents said? And the Rebbe answered me, and it was a zettel, it wasn't a letter, and he circled there lahashkia, that I should invest, we should invest that money. But then the Rebbe added to it, Aval ayin, have a look, in Shulchan Aruch Yeredeya, have a look in Yeredeya, Siman Reish Mem Tes. And then he said, and in addition to that, we should give each of us $5 to tzedakah. So I looked in Siman, in the Shulchan Aruch, I hadn't learnt that particular Siman at that time, and I looked in, and there it was, Hilchos Tzedakah. It's talking about the halachas of giving tzedakah. So the Rabbi was actually telling me that the first thing to do, though you're going to invest it and so on, the first thing you do is you have to make sure that you're given tzedakah correctly. So I learned through the halachas, and there was one thing that Taka caught my eye. I thought, why did the Rabbi have to stress this? I mean, obviously, we would have given tzedakah eventually, especially if we would have earned something from the investment. But what caught my eye was what it said in Shulchan Aruch there, that it says, and it talked about, and they say Kalim and other Meforshim, it talks about the idea of making sure that you give the tzedakah not just on what you're earning from an investment, but on the money that you received that was going to be put into investment as well. And that I hadn't thought about. And I think maybe that's one of the points that the Rabbi was driving at. The fact is that I should make sure I give tzedakah properly. I give the meiser, not just on what the profits are going to be, but on the actual original amount. I hadn't thought about it before because I had been a bacher. I'd learned in Yeshiva all the time. I never had a job. You know, some people might think that's a bit rough these days, but I never had a job. I never earned any money and so on. And this was the first time I had money in my possession. So the Rabbi was giving me the hint that you should look at all the details of the halachas of tzedakah. So I did, and we gave. But there was an extra point too. The Rabbi said, give 2 times chai. So this was a question to me. Why? Because let's have a look at the halacha, what the halacha says. In Shulchan Aruch in Reish Mem Zayin, not Reish Mem Tes, but in Reish Mem Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch writes in the Yeridea, mitzvahs eser, it's a mitzvahs eser, litein tzedakah, to give tzedakah. And it's also a loisaseh. If you don't give tzedakah, you're over a loisaseh, because it says loisame, it says levavcha. Because you shouldn't hold back your heart from giving over. So therefore it was stressed there that the whole idea of tzedakah is midoraisa, that comes from the Torah. What is this tzedakah? Am I yotze just by 4 davening giving a 10-cent coin or something like that in the pushka? So you have a look in Sivan, then you have a look in Sivan Reish Mem Tes, the one the Rebbe pointed out to me. And there it says, if I can read directly from what the Shulchan Aruch writes, the Shulchan Aruch writes, Shir Nisinasa, the amount that you're supposed to give to tzedakah, Im Yodei Maseges, if you have the ability, then Yitein Kfitzer Chaniyim, you have to give to what the poor people around you need. Give as much as you can. V'im ein Yodei Maseges, but if you're unable to do that, there's so many poor people, you're limited with your money, so I'm going to give out all my money, I'm going to be left with nothing. So the Shulchan Aruch says, if you don't have that ability, Yitein ad chomesh nechosov. You should give up to a fifth of what you have, of what you possess. That, the Shulchan Aruch says, is mitzvah min hamuvcha. That's considered the best way of fulfilling this mitzvah. V'achad me'asora midah beinanis. And if you want to give 1 in 10, in other words, 10%, meiser, then that's considered a midah beinanis. That's considered a nice way of acting. It's not going above, not going below, it's okay. Pachos mikan ayin ro. If you give less than that, then it's an ayin ro. It means that you don't look properly at the world, you don't see the things that you're supposed to do, you don't care about the aniyim, and so on. So, then comes the part that I mentioned previously. It mentions the first time you give it, you have to give it from the principal amount, and then after that, mikan ve'ela chomesh sheharviach v'chol shana. Then you give 10% of everything that you've earned from that investment. You don't have to keep giving on the original investment, just everything you've earned. But that was a side point that I believe the Rabbi was pointing out to me. But the main thing is here, it's talking about a 5th to tzedakah and a 10th to tzedakah. A 5th being mitzvah min hamuvcha, a 10th being midah beinanis. Where does that come from? Where does the idea of a 5th come from? So there is a Gemara in Ksubis, in Daf Nun Amud Aleph, where the Gemara talks about a chomesh. They learned it out from Aser to Aser Enu. That when it talked about Yitzchak, who was asking for a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he turned out to Kol Asher, everything that you give me, Aser Asrenu Loch. The double expression of Aser Asrenu So they say that this refers to the idea of a fifth, 2 times 1/10. So that's where the idea of a fifth comes from. And this was that takona that was made in Usha. The Gemara talks about it and says that this was a takona that was made in Usha, that they said that therefore a person should give preferably 1/5. The idea of 1/10 obviously comes from the idea of Maisa. You talk about Maisa Ksofim. Maisa is a tenth, so therefore you give a tenth. That's the normal, that's the middle way, so to speak. That's okay as well. So the idea therefore comes out that you have to give this particular amount. If so, have a look. We have a look a little bit further down, and Sif Beis, and the Shulchan Aruch says, "La'olam la'yimna adam atzmei pochas mishlishis hashekel." Always a person should make sure that he doesn't hold back from giving at least 1/3 of a shekel l'shana. Now, what happened to the 10th? What happened to the 5th? What happened to the statement if you give less than a 10th, you're considered as being ayin ra? The Gemara says here, shlishis hashekel. I mean, the Shulchan Aruch says shlishis hashekel. So what is the pshat? So the pshat is that there it says, im nosan pochas mizeh lo kiyam mitzvah stock. If you give less than that, you haven't been makayim the mitzvah. The mitzvah d'oraisa is to give tzedakah, as we saw. And the mitzvah of d'oraisa you can fulfill by giving a shlish of a shekel. And the Gemara actually says the reason why it's a shlish of a shekel was because of the fact that that was what was given over in the Nehemiah. There's a pasuk in Nehemiah that says that the Bnei Yisroel, the people who came back, they gave over a shlish, 1/3 of a shekel, each of them, to Bedek Habayis, as a gift to the Beis Hamikdash that they were rebuilding and so on. So therefore that's where they learn out from, at least the pasuk in Tanakh, that it has to be a shlish at least. That's the amount that has to be given to tzedakah. So what do we mean by this? What do we mean by the fact that you only have to give a shlish? You only have to give a shlish, as I said, because of the fact that you want to fulfill that mitzvah of tzedakah. But the takona of Usha impressed upon us the fact that you have to give not more than 1/5. So therefore, under those circumstances, it appears as if the Rabbanon held at that time that you should give up to 1/5 in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Some people talk about the idea of when you're talking about giving Maisa Ksofim and so on, whether it's 10th or whether it's 1/5. The question is as to whether that's midoraisa, whether it's midrabanon, whether it's just a minute ba'alma. And it appears as if it was a takana based on this takana of Usha. Although some people say differently, the Gra writes differently. He believes it's mina Torah. There are others who say that it's midrabanon, and there are others, including later poskim, such as I think Reb Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg and others. I think the Minchas Yitzchak also writes that that's only a minhag to give this particular amount. But to fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah, you have to give at least a smaller amount. Whatever way we look at it, however way we look at it, the psak in Shulchan Aruch is that we have to give, we should give at least, even if it might be more than what we have mechuyev to give, we should give at least 1/10 or at least 1/5. And then it does say earlier than that a person is allowed to give more than that. If he's got more money and the aniyim need it, then he can give more than that. But that's the basic rule. It's interesting to note that the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya in 2 places, both in Geras HaTshuva and in Geras HaKodesh. The Alter Rebbe writes that he asks this question. He says you have to give tzedakah to be paid there. Anything that you've done wrong, you should give tzedakah. And he says, therefore, even though it says that there is a shiur, a 10th or a 5th or whatever it may be, that's under normal circumstances. But if you feel that you need to give more tzedakah because of your personal standing, you've done things that are not correct, you haven't brought the oir into the world by doing the mitzvahs you're supposed to, and chas v'sholom, even lahepech, if you've done the mitzvahs lois, if you've done things that you shouldn't have been doing. So under those circumstances, he says, then we are allowed to bring in even higher in order to make up for that by bringing more oir into the world, by giving even more than we have to give. So I think that that's what the Rabbi was perhaps mentioning to me when he said, add on $18 each to the Meiser. I think it was because of the fact that he wanted to tell us that we shouldn't just limit it to Meiser or to a Chomish if we went that far, but we should add extra to it as well in order that we should get used to the fact that we don't necessarily have to stick to that particular number, that particular limit. If we need to go higher, we are able to go higher, and we should go higher. So they're the basic halachas that are mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. But these halachas have to be explained even much further. There's a lot I could talk for an hour and a half. There's a lot that could be talked about the mitzvah of tzedakah. Number one, where do I have to give a tenth from? Do I have to give a tenth from all my possessions? Is it just for kesef? After all, it says ma'aser ksofim. Is it only for money? Do I have to give ma'aser all the time in every single circumstance? Can I push it off for a while? Am I allowed to say I don't have the money at the moment now, but I know I'm mechuyev in ma'aser? Can I say at the end of the year I'll make a cheshbon and then I'll give the money then, and therefore you'll be owing to tzedakah? There is also the questions of who I can give tzedakah to. Can I give tzedakah to an aliyah in shul? Is that considered on the tzedakah cheshbon of ma'aser ksofim? And there's a whole vikuach about it. There's a whole talk about it. Talked about menoisa kelim. Speak about the idea of giving money for the neiros, for the candles for the shul, and they say they paskin you can do it, but it has to be under certain tanoim. Later poskim say that you have to originally say that before you give that money that I am giving it for this purpose of being able to fulfill the mitzvah of towards Meiser that says going towards Meiser. If you don't say it and you just give it just like that, then maybe it's not considered as Meiser, because Meiser should be Meiser. Oni should be for the poor people. And there are a lot of halachas that we could talk about. I have a whole list of them here that I could go into, but it's getting late. And by the way, the clock's in the wrong place. When you have a speaker facing this way, you should have the clock always up there. So the idea is, therefore, that we have to learn these halachas well. Let me give you one example of the shilas that I get on this inyanim. Just before Yontif, my niece in America called me, and she says she has introduced a custom in her life where she's got time spare. So what she does is she's got a friend who lives in Queens. She lives in Brooklyn, and she's got a friend who lives in Queens. And that friend unfortunately lost her husband not long ago, and she's left at home with kleine kinderlach, with 3 or 4 young children, and she's not making ends meet. She's just struggling very hard. And therefore she can't afford the help that is necessary to clean the house, to wash the dishes, to wash the clothes and things like that. So therefore my niece said, I volunteered to go to her and to say that I'm going to look after her, help her look after the children a few times a week. So I spend about 8 hours a week helping this particular woman. And I don't take anything for it. Now, she didn't ask me whether that's considered an act of tzedakah or not. L'chorei, she probably thought, and probably is correct, that she's not giving any money to this person, she's giving of her time. So is that therefore really considered as tzedakah? How do you calculate it? But she did ask me, she said, I have to take an Uber to get there. If I go by subway and bus, it takes me an hour and a half. If I go by Uber, it takes me less than half an hour. And when I go by Uber, there I have to actually give out money. It costs me $35, $40 a trip, there and back. It's a lot of money. Can I use that particular money that I give to the Uber man? Am I able to take that off my tzedakah cheshbon? So I said I was sort of caught on the moment. I didn't have my svarim in front of me and everything. I said, look, that money you can certainly take off from your tzedakah cheshbon. Because the only reason you're paying it is because you have it's expenses, so to speak, that are used in order for you to do an act of chesed for a poor person. This is really a poor person, a person who needs help. And then I thought to myself later on, after I gave her that answer, because that's all she asked about, I thought to myself, what about the time that she spent So I figured to myself, what would be the din if I told her that she should get this lady to give her the money that she's saving? In other words, if she would normally pay $20 an hour, and she's saving that because this girl, my niece, is coming to help her out, let her make a cheshbon over the week of how much money she would have had to pay normally, and then what she should do is she should give you that money. And then you can take that money, and then you can say, all right, this is money that I've earned, I'm giving it all back to you. Can she then say that this is considered as being tzedakah, as being can she take it off of Meisim cheshbon? And I thought to myself, why not? If she's getting that money, she's earning it, and what she does then is to give it back to it. She's actually giving money now back to this lady. So under those circumstances, why can't that be considered as tzedakah? There is a bit of a catch there, and I thought to myself, because if she's earning that money, then she has to pay tzedakah on that money. So it's not as if she gives back that particular amount. She has to add 10% of that, let's say. Let's say she gets $100. She has to add 10% of that onto her tzedakah cheshbon, and then she gives the $100 to the lady. She can only take $90 off the original tzedakah cheshbon that she had, because that has to include also the money that she's giving has to include the 10% that she got. But at least under those circumstances, she can be yotze by giving away and getting 90% of that money to be able to give to tzedakah. Now, I haven't thought it through fully yet, and I'd be interested if anybody has any ha'oros to make on it. But lechora, that could be considered as a very good way in which we can solve this problem of helping her on her tzedakah cheshbon for the acts of chesed and kindness that she is doing. I must say, I'd like to finish off by the fact that there was a yechidus that my father had once with the Rabbi, and he asked the Rabbi, you may have heard it, it's been on Gem, he asked the Rabbi, listen, I'm known as a good orator, I'm known as a speaker, and anybody who heard him speak and everybody who knew him would say amen to that. It's 100% correct. He was a wonderful orator. So therefore, he said to the Rabbi, though, I speak, and people are happy, and people clap, and people come up and congratulate me later on. But how many people does it really affect that they change their lives because of my drasha? Yeah, they say it was a wonderful story, it was a wonderful thought, and so on and so forth, but does that really move them to change their lives, to become a little bit closer to Yiddishkeit, do mitzvahs more behidur, and so on? So he wanted a bracha from the Rebbe that he should be able to have that effect on people. So the Rebbe said to him two things. The Rebbe said, first of all, I'm going to tell you that it does say that dvarim hayotzim and halev nichnosim and halev. If when you're speaking, you really have in your heart that you want to affect these people with the words that you're giving over, then the Chazal say, the nichnosim and halev, it will definitely enter their hearts and they'll become better people because of it. But I'd like to do something more practical, he said. He then said a second thing. He said, when you give a drasha, what you have to do is you have to make sure that that drasha at the end has a bechein, has a conclusion that is going to tell people something you should do, you have to do. In other words, not just stam geret an inyan, and not just some to make them feel happy and so on. It's very nice. You know, that sometimes my father made them cry and so on. It's not just a matter of their emotional feelings, but you have to leave them with a point and a kuda. You have to do something. You have to do something from what the lesson that we learn from this particular drasha. I won't go into the sequel of the story, what happened when he came back to Australia and he put that into practice. That's for another time. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that if I have taken on that advice, because my father told me that actually as we were coming out from dollars from the Rebbe said something else to my father at the time. My father reminded me of this story. So I felt it was something that in a sense came within the Dalet Avos of the Rebbe, something that's shaykh to me as well. And I've always tried, when I give a drasha, when I give a speech, to make sure that there's something that comes out that's going to be, so to speak, halacha l'maaseh, that people should take away with them what they can do. So I'd like to ask you all a favor. We talked a little bit about tzedakah today. I tried to raise the inyan of how important it is to learn the proper halachas, so that you know when you're giving tzedakah, you're not just giving it, but you're giving it al pidin, what the Rabban wanted us to do, what the Torah wants us to do, and you're giving the amount that you should, and you're giving the amount in which to whom you should give it, not stam as they given, and also the amount that you have to give, you've worked out on the proper basis of a keren, of a basis of, you know for sure that this I do have to give and this I don't necessarily have to give, and so on. It's a very important thing that's nageya to every single individual. And if you have a shaila, ask. My father once had to go across the date line, and the whole story of what happened, this is before Shavuos, and we know the Rabbi was very makpid on not going across the date line and so on. So in the end, he got the haskama from the Rabbi, but the Rabbi said when he comes to New York, he shouldn't paskin for himself, but he should ask a Rav Moira Heiro in New York what he should do about Yontif, because he mix up in the Sphira because he crossed the date line. And Shavuos is not on a date. Shavuos is according to the 49 days that you've counted. So therefore, from that we can see that the Rebbe says that at certain times when you think you know the halacha, even a Rav Moira Hara himself, you have to consult with somebody else because you're negei b'davar. You're involved in it. So therefore, if you have a shaila and stocker, don't try to paskin for yourself necessarily. Call up your local Rav, call up the person who you respect, and ask that shaila. So this is what I'm asking of you, to do something lepoil that comes out from this small shir that we've given tonight. Please make sure that you do something in order to make sure that you are giving tzedakah al pidin, you're giving the correct amount, and please God, because of that, you know, the Shulchan Aruch mentions how great things that can happen because of tzedakah. And through tzedakah we are told that the Mashiach is going to come, Nigolin, we're going to be redeemed. And please God, if we are makpid in that inyan, we will do our bit to ensure that Mashiach comes now.
Thank you, Rabbi Gutnick, for those Varma Verita, those inspirational words. We are lucky, we're very privileged to have with us tonight another member of the Beis Din, by the name of Rabbi Greenwald, and we're so lucky he came, and if you could please share with us a few words of Torah.
Usually we have Al Pishnei Eidim Yakum Dover, and tonight we're going to have Al Pishnei Dayanim Yakum Dover. I've covered the Rabbanim, the Chashav Ha'olam over here. It's a very big pleasure, and I'm very grateful that I was invited to speak tonight. And I'd like to begin. I had a Rebbe, great Rebbe, who was a Talmud of Chana Wasserman, and he was a Mendel Kaplan. And someone asked him after Pesach that, how is your Pesach? So Reb Mendel said that you have to ask me next year. Now I can tell you how last Pesach was. But if you want to know how this Pesach was, you have to be next year. And I think the idea behind it was, as the Pirush of the Avodram, and the davening which we say on Yontiv, it says, Hasiyenu Hashem Elokeinu es birkas miyadecha. So the Avodram says, what does the word Hasiyenu come from? So he says two explanations. One explanation comes from the word Masa, like Masas HaMelech, presence. And another explanation he gives, it comes from the expression of someone who's carrying a burden, like we have a Masa B'nei Kahos. So that's also an idea of Masa of Hasiyenu. And the Avodram says that both of these ideas is what we have in mind when we say the bracha of Hasiyenu, Hashem Elokeinu es birkas miyadecha. That we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He should load us up with presents. He should load us up. We should have a big present. It should be like a burden of gifts, of presents, which we're able to carry with us, the blessings of the Moyadim, which we carry out throughout the year. So therefore, the hashpah of Shavuos, which we have, which we take it now and it should last us till next year. And that's what's really very beautiful about the Kinus HaTorah which we have tonight, is that we come right after Shavuos, at the time of Kabbalah HaTorah, and it comes a night of Shiurim, a night of Torah. What could be greater than that? It's such a tremendous, beautiful Kavod Shemayim. One of the big questions, the vexing question which modern man faces with is, what do you give to a man who has everything? I wanted to give a present to my doctor, and I went over to him. He's tackling one of those type of people. So I asked him, what do you give to a man who has everything? So he thought for a few moments, and he says, well, I would start with antibiotics. So when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's really taka akasha. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what could we give HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hashem is the creator. He creates everything. He owns everything. So what does it even mean that we're able to, what are we giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So we find that actually we say in the Kedusha, we say in the Kedusha all the time, in Shabbos, it says, Kaser yitin l'cha Hashem Elokeinu, that we give a crown to Hashem, the Malachim give a crown, and together with Klal Yisrael, we also give a crown to Hashem. So what's this idea of a crown? Why did it say specifically we give a crown to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So what's the idea of a crown? So if you take the wealthiest person in the world, he could buy, let's say, take Elon Musk. If he wants to, he could take a spaceship, he could go to the moon, he could buy anything. He had hundreds of billions of dollars. So let's say he would have an idea, he could afford it. He asked the jeweler, he says, you know what, see what the crown of the King of England, what he wears, and I want you to make a replica, and it should be the same quality gold and the same quality diamonds, and I want you to make me such a crown. And the jeweler makes him such a crown, and then he takes it, and it's just like it looks, it's indistinguishable with the crown which the king wears. And he takes it, and he decides, he goes to work, and he puts it on. If he would do such a thing, he would walk to work, they would lock him up in a loony bin. They would say he'd make a laughing stock out of himself. Why? Why is it a laughing stock? It's a beautiful thing. So the answer is that, first of all, a crown is only something which a king wears. A king wears a crown. And second of all, the king doesn't make a crown himself. It's the people, the subjects who accept the person as a king. They coronate the king, and they give the king the crown. So it comes out that the only thing which a king, even if he has all the money in the world, which he can't give and he needs others to give him, is a crown. That's the idea of a crown. I'd like to share with you a beautiful medrash. And I thought it was a very obscure medrash, but just today by Shalashudas at the Kollel, so the one who gave the Torah mentioned this medrash. So now, I think statistically, the chances are that he mentioned this medrash, and I'm mentioning this medrash tonight. And I spoke to a friend of mine. What is this? The meaning of this? We both said it's like a kiss, a divine kiss. Hashem shows how much He loves you. So I say no. I think it's that Hashem's telling me, Greenwald, don't think you're so great. You found this obscure medrash. That was the message that he was giving. Others know this medrash also. So the medrash is as follows. This medrash has the haskama of Rav Shimon ben Yochai, because when Rav Shimon ben Yochai heard this medrash, he said it was kedai for me to come into the world just to hear this beautiful pshat. So the medrash is as follows. The medrash is in Shir Hashirim, and it says that Rav Shimon ben Yochai asked Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi, maybe you heard a pshat in the pasuk of Shir Hashirim, Ba'atara she'itrei le'imai, with the crown that his mother adorned him with. So he said, yes, I heard a pshat, and he said a pshat from his father. And he said it's a mashal about a king. He had a daughter who he loved very much. And he loved her to the extent he didn't stop loving her until after he called her daughter, he called her a sister. And he kept on loving her more and more until he not only called her a sister, he called her a mother. So he said the same thing is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu first calls us a daughter, like the pasuk says, Shimu biti uri'i. And then he loves us more and more, and then he calls us a sister, like we say in Shir Hashirim, Piskuli achasi rayasi, he calls us a sister. And then he doesn't stop loving us until he calls us a mother. Like it says a pasuk in Yeshaya and Perek Nun Aleph, Akshivu alai ami uluumi, give ear to me, my nation, my mother. So when Rav Shimon ben Yochai heard that pshat, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai stood up and he kissed him on the head, and he said, if I only came into the world to hear this pshat, it would have been kedai. So it's an amazing pshat. If you to know true pshat, I don't know if I could give true pshat. There's something we could take out of. They said my Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, so he said over from he liked this pshat from the Brisker Rav. He said we learn a taisis, we take something out of a taisis. So so I would just like something to share some thoughts about this medrash. That what's the difference between a daughter, a sibling, and a mother? And I think that I asked my kids, what do you say? They thought a joke was coming up, but no, they said the daughter is a taker, the daughter receives, a sibling does give and takes between the siblings, they're both equals, and then a mother is one who gives. So that this Medrash is saying that we go from being a daughter, and then we're going from a sister, so that shows that it's just like by a bus of Adam in a family, that the relationship between children and parents, it evolves over the course of time. In the beginning, a child, the parents are always giving to the child, as Rosh Yeshiva said before, without taking anything in return. And after that, so then the child becomes more of a giver. And also the relationship changes, the whole dynamics of the relationship change. Rav Shamshon Fuller Hirsch, in his introduction to the Sefer Chayrev, so he makes a dedication, a loving dedication to his parents, and he writes as follows. He describes his parents, the guardians of my childhood, the guides of my adolescence, the friends of my manhood. So it seems they start as being guardians. Then after that, they become the guys, more of a mentor relationship, and after that, they become even more friends. And after a while, by a bus of Adam, the relationship changes further. If the parents get older, and then the daughter changes from not only being a receiver and a friend, but then the daughter becomes a caregiver. The daughter gives to the mother. So she has a certain bechina also of a mother. And the same way we find with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the same type of thing. That even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Av, is a Melech, that never changed. The Tata blind the Tata. But nevertheless, the Pasuk says, we say, Tenu oiz lelekim, give strength to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we see that there is an idea that we have something that we're giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I'd like to share a beautiful story where we see this idea brought out. A number of hundreds of years ago, there was a person who became a Ger Tzedek, and at that time, the law was that whoever converts, a non-Jew, converts to Judaism, gets the death penalty. And he did it, and he tried to hide his conversion, but eventually he was caught, and then he was in prison, and he was going to be led to the execution the next day. So the night before his execution, an Adam Gadol visited this Ger, and he comes into the prison cell, and he sees that the Ger was crying. So the rabbi asked him, why was he crying? Why are you crying? Maybe you're afraid of death. Maybe you're afraid they're going to torture you. And the Ger Tzedek replied that no, that doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid of that. I'm only afraid of one thing, that I'll be lonely in the world to come. Why? He says that he never married, so therefore he didn't have a father, he didn't have a mother, he didn't have a wife, he didn't have children. So I'll be all alone in the Olam Haba. So that's what was bothering him, that loneliness, that extensional loneliness in the Olam Haba. So the Adam Gadol quoted the following pasuk. It says in pasuk in Yeshaya, Kayamar Hashem, Ani Rishon v'Ani Acharoin u'Mevoladai Ein Elikim. Thus said Hashem, I am the first, I am the last, and aside from me there is no Hashem. So then on this there's a medrash in Shir Hashirim, and he says that the pshat of the pasuk is I am the first to the one who has no father, and I am the last one to the one who has no son. So this means, said the rabbi, I am a father to everyone who has no father, to everyone who is lonely, and I am a son to everyone who dies childless. This is the promise of the Almighty. So when the Ger Tzedek heard this, he exclaimed, you have comforted me, and only then did the rabbi leave him. So this idea, you see that there's a bechina, that the different relationships that Kadosh Baruch Hu has, and that Hashem, he's missing, if we are all have this unique mission, we're all like a diamond, and we are able to put that in the Keser of Hashem, and that's what Hashem is waiting for, and that's what he's missing. I just recently saw a story, I'm sure everyone here knows the story, but the Ramesha Katlarsi, who was just nifter, so he traveled extensively, and he established Chabad centers around the globe. And in 1982, he received an urgent call from the Rebbe's office asking him to travel to Curacao. I was going to say Caraco, but my wife corrected me, which is an island in the Caribbean. When he was there, he helped a young boy leave a school that was run by the church, and they would force him to go to church services, and enrolled him in the Yeshiva in New York. And the boy's father was so grateful that he wrote a letter to the Rebbe and thanking the Rebbe for helping, and quote, a small Jew from a faraway island. So the Rebbe wrote him back a letter, and the Rebbe said, I must take exception to your referring to yourself as a small Jew from Carousel. Every Jew, man or woman, has a soul which is part of godliness above, as explained in the Tanya, the beginning of chapter 2. Thus, there is no such thing as a small Jew, and a Jew must never underestimate his or her tremendous potential. So I'd just like to end off the way Rav Gutnick mentioned, we should end off with a lemaisa, that in a way we all merit, that we are to see the tremendous potential in ourselves, the potential in our other people, and sometimes that potential, that diamond is sometimes covered up. Even a diamond has to be sometimes polished, it has to be, part of it has to be, there could be even a stone wrapping a diamond that has to be all cut away. So even though sometimes our own diamond and other people's diamond is to be concealed in grime and in sin and maybe bad midas, but to recognize it as a diamond it really is, and then we should be able to take that diamond and others and ourselves to polish it, to be able to perfect it and give it to Hashem as the only thing which he truly lacks, which is a crown. V'yitin l'cha kesem malucha.
Thank you, Rabbi Greenwald, for those words of chizuk. The next person who we're lucky enough to hear tonight was somebody I was zocher to learn by for multiple years, and recently we're all lucky enough that he recently wrote a sefer on Shchita. A dear member of our Kehillah, Rabbi Dickstein.
Thank you, Gutnick. Based on what the Alter Rebbe said in Tanya Perek Zayin, I would like to start by the Gemara on Masechet Sukkah, speaking about Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, that when he was learning, it was if a oif was poireach me'olov, if a chicken was flying on top of him, he was burned down. And Tosfos down there said that it was because it was like Matan Torah. That's a connection of Shavuos. And there are three kind of guys that learning this Gemara. I would like to call them the excited guy, the intellectual guy, and the earthy guy. The excited guy would, when he actually read this Gemara, he said, "Oh, such a big kiddush, mamish like my Har Sinai." The intellectual guy will go and try to figure out if this chicken was belong to someone, who is going to pay for this loss. And the earthy guy will say, ay, baltashchis. Rabbi Gutnick said before that the Tanya, by the way, is Bad Cherabonon, of course, so let's start now. Rabbi Gutnick mentioned before that on every Yom Tov we're supposed to learn something that is actually related to the Yom Tov, and I guess the title Kinus Torah is actually connected to Shavuos, because Shavuos is Chag Matan Torah, what we can do. Everything that have been said today and will be said today is connected to Mahusay Shel Yom. But we all know that the main difference between the Torah that have been given before Matan Torah and the Torah that have been given after is practicality, Maaseh Befoyal. The Ove is Kimos HaTorah Shel Nitna, but when we're talking about the way how to do the Torah, this is actually given to us in practical ways. So I would like to go into a very practical topic that it's actually sometimes mamish a daily topic. And I would like to go through the poskim until the Alter Rebbe and see how the Alter Rebbe B'Leshono Yazov is machria between machlokesen and make things clear and put things mamish keshulchan ne'oruch u'muchen le'echol. I'm talking about the topic of Baltashchis. Before I start, does anyone knows where Hilches Baltashchis is mentioned in Shulchan Aruch? The Shulchan Aruch b'Siyasef, not the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. On what chelek? Is that in Orach Chaim, Yeredeyah, Choshen Mishpot? Okay. There is no halach ilches baltashchis in the Shulchan Aruch. There is a lot of halachas related to baltashchis, but they are on Oira Chaim. There is halachas like the Ashchozas Eichlin. There is in Yoredeye, which is start to be connected to my area. It's about a person that doesn't have offer for Kisei Adom, that he allowed to make an offer by burning some stuff. There is halachas on Choshen Mishpot about Shchenim, if they need to take away a tree that is disturb the other, etc. But when we actually see the very coherent message about Baltashchis is started by the Rambam. The Rambam have Hilchos Baltashchis in very, I would say, surprisingly place. It's halachas that I'm sure everyone knows for a totally different reason. Hilches Melochim u'Milcham Yisrael u'Melech HaMashiach, the last halachas on the Rambam. And down there the Rambam talking about Milchomes, and so the Rambam speaking about Ilonei Marchal, that we don't allow to cut, and if a person cut Ilon that give pri, he is Mechuyev B'Malkos, in other words it's Midoraisa, and not just in a stage when you are running after or trying to destroy a city of the enemy, but everywhere. And then he goes on, and the Alter Rebbe actually bring the halachas in Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpot, only 3 seifim, but in this seifim, B'Lashon Azov, he put together so many details and give us the whole Torah about Baltashchis, what it is, and what you should do, and what you should not do, in a way that no Poisek said it before. And I would like to discuss some practical issues and start to say what is that Baltashchis or not. So, let's say, for example, that Bochrim going from YG to the mikveh. Happening from time to time, yeah? And when they are going and they see that on Nature Strip, one of the neighbors along the way, he put some furniture, a little bit whatever, not so great, not so new, and this is actually going to go the next stage that is going to the rubbish basically. When the rubbish truck is coming, it's going to be discarded. And one of the bochim wake up on the left leg, that's how you say it? Left side. And he decided to get away his excitement. At least that, not in the bochrim. And he deal with one of the furniture that is there in a way that afterwards this furniture is useless. Is that called Baltashchis? This furniture was number 1, hefker. Totally hefker. Number 2, it was already a little bit unused because usually people don't put very functioning furniture on the nature strip for the rubbish bin for the rubbish truck to take it. Is that called Baltashchis? There is another 2 aspects on that the Alter Rebbe brings. But before the Alter Rebbe, let's start with the Gemara. Hashoiver kelim b'chamosei. A person who destroys stuff because he is angry. Is that called Baltashchis? Well, it's called something else. It's say Kimle b'derava minei. It's called Oved Avodah Zorah. So there is also the element of Baltashchis. The Gemara, Shabbos Daf Kufei, asks straight away that he said that a person is allowed to make, if he see that his Bnei Bais not behave appropriately, he allowed to show them that he is angry by breaking something. So that means that there is a certain place for that as well. But the Gemara down there said that the way how this person do it is that he's a break, because first of all, if he's really angry, he should not do that. It's only if he's come in between himself and only to show some educational message. I don't know how educational is that, but whatever, that's for another discussion. But if he wants to actually deliver some message through that, and the raya is that he's not just, go all over the place, but he's actually have some meaning behind it, is that the keli that he is breaking is a broken keli. So this is allowed. The Gemara says this is allowed. But the Alter Rebbe, when it comes to halacha lepoyal, he said differently. I would like to read the lotion of there is about the hefker. We'll come to it because the Rebbe have amazing chidush about that. But I would like to start quoting the lotion of the Alter Rebbe, and we go from this svore, what is the issue of baltashchis, and then we go forward on the details. So the Alter Rebbe started. It's Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Gutnick, Guf and Nefesh, Baltashchis, Chelek Choshen Mishpot. It started to speak about on Sif Yud Dalet. כשם שצורך להיזהר בגופוי, שלא לאבדוי ולא לקלקלוי ולא להזיקוי, כך צורך להיזהר במאוידוי, שלא לאבדוי ולא לקלקלוי ולא להזיקוי. In the same way that a person should not, he need to be very careful with his body, not to le'abdoi chas v'sholem, not to commit suicide or whatever, not to destroy it, and not to make any damage to it. The same way about money, about me'oid. Now, before even we come to the details, let's try to understand. The Alter Rebbe making over here amazing chidush when we're talking about why. What is the reason behind the issue of baltashchis? If we're talking, for example, if we look at the chinuch, try to understand why there is an issue of baltashchis is, he said, כדי ללמד נפשנו לאהוב הטוב והתועלת ונרחיק מכל דבר רע מכל השחוסה. To teach ourselves to love the good and get far away from all the corruption and all of the bad things that leading to that. In other words, Isur Baltashchis, if we say in the Lomdische Lotion, is not about the Hefze, it's about the Gavre. In other words, it's nothing to do with the actual thing, if it's Shalem, if it's broke, if there is useful or not. The fact is that me, when I am breaking something, I create a nature, a bad nature in myself. That's the issue of Avodah Zorah. That's what the Chinuch said. The Ramban take it on different approach, and he said that because on certain stage it could be that the person himself is going to have hanoah from the thing that he's destroying now, you are mazik yourself, and therefore don't do that. In other words, just, plus, minus, profit against loss. You are going, if you are destroying it now, you won't enjoy it later. But the Alter Rebbe said it in a very different way. We all know that the yachas of the halacha to the person's body is very extreme. The body is called rechush of Hashem. It's not ours. It's a property of Hashem. And because of that, a person could say that I can destroy myself, it's my body. That's actually the Veltish Anoches is. My body is myself, and I'm responsible on it, and if I decided to do X, Y, and Z, who can tell me what to do? But the halacha is that your body is not yours, it belongs to Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe said, in the same way that your body belongs to Hashem, and therefore you don't allow to destroy it because it's Hashem's, in the same way is all of the other properties in the world. Now we can understand that according to the Alter Rebbe, the question about the rechush that was hefker is not even a shaila. The fact that the rechush is hefker doesn't mean that it's not belong to Hashem. It means that there is no person on it now. But because of that, Isur Baltashchis cholen it big time. I would like, before we continue and having some diukim on the Alter Rebbe's Loshen, I would like to go a little bit deeper on that particular point about the status of a hefker, if destroyed called Baltashchis or not. We're coming now to the time the next, I don't know if you call it Yom Tov, the next special days is the days that we are all learning Hilchos Besabchire, you put it that way. And we all know that the famous Gemara on Masechet Tomid that said that there is a Shoimrim on the Beis HaMikdash, and it was Ish Harabayis that going around the Shoimrim at night, and he said Sholom, Sholom, and whatever, and they're supposed to say Sholom Alecho Ish Harabayis. And if they don't say, if he said Sholom, there is no answer, that means that they are fall asleep. And if they are fall asleep, Ureshus Hoi Saloi, the Gemara said, down there, Ushi Saloi Lisroi Fes Begodov. And it was not just a theoretical thing. It was, the Gemara said that it was a thing like that, that if in the middle of the night you hear screaming in Yerushalayim, then people say to each other, Ma kol ze oko, ze kol ben Levi sheyoshan of God of Nisrofim. In other words, it was not just a Hilchas el Meshicha. It was something that is actually applies. So when a Meshgiach is catching you, following you asleep on a Seder, and he just tapping your shoulder, just be grateful. But the Rosh said something very powerful about that. The Rosh said that that from that we can understand ve'en kan mishum bal tashchis. That's what the Rosh said on the spot. There is no bal tashchis over here. You take actually a good cloth and you burn them out. We're not talking about the person. Yeah, that's that's another discussion if it's bal tashchis or not. We talk about his clothes. What his clothes did. So ve'en kan mishum bal tashchis mishum the hefker based in hefker. Because hefker based in considered the hefker, therefore there is no bal tashchis. Now the Alter Rebbe said that hefker is not giving you the hater or the way to do bal tashchis to the thing. So what's the Rosh explain over here? And there is actually opinions that say that because of that, the Rosh, his svore is that hefker, chefetz of hefker, a property of hefker, there is no bal tashchis applied to it. But the Rebbe said, the Alter Rebbe said that there is, so we must try to find out some way how we can say what the Rosh said. So the Rebbe gives few answers to that and reject them one after another, and then finally there is an answer that covers all together. If you're familiar with Bar Metzra and you enjoy it, you enjoy this piece. Listen. So the first roots the Rebbe said is that according to the Rosh, hefker based in, it's a spatial hefker. If you're talking about a person that taking stuff and said, this is not mine anymore, whatever, if you want to take it, you can take it, that's one hefker. And for that hefker, there is bal tashchis. But hefker based in, because the based in make the hefker, so that have something different, and because of that, the Gedolah of bal tashchis is not applied to that. But the Rebbe rejected. Why? Because the Alter Rebbe said, the lotion of the Alter Rebbe is that the afilu shel hefker, we didn't read this lotion yet, but the Rebbe said that that bal tashchis is belong to all of the properties, all of the chafotzim, ve'afilu shel hefker. And the Alter Rebbe didn't come into saying that if it's hefker based in, then it's okay. If it's regular hefker, it's not. So it must be Alter Rebbe is not mechalek, and according to Alter Rebbe, even hefker based in, it's still bal tashchis applies. The second teirutz is that why is Ish Rabbi is doing that? Why doing that? Because he's a pyromaniac, he's enjoyed the fire, he would like to smell the clothes. Why doing that? He's doing that because he wants this Cohen, if he'll survive the exercise, or his friends, his mishmor, to make sure that no one will do it anymore. So that is the same way, lehatil eimo al anshe habayis. So as the Gemara in Shabbos said that a person allowed to break a keli because he wants to deliver the message to anshe habayis, over here also there is some educational value to this burning. So the answer is that we mentioned that in short before, that the Gemara actually down there asks how come that a person allowed to break a keli because of bal tashchis, and the answer is that it's a broken keli, and the question comes back. Down there it's a broken keli. Over here the clothes are just fine. So down there is no baltashris. Over here it's supposed to be baltashris. The third answer is that this issue is derech hashchose v'kilkul. Whenever, and that is actually coming to details of baltashris that we are going to go into a little bit in Barchove, that when baltashris is applied, it's only if you are doing it because you feel like it, because you want this thing to be broken. But if there is a toiles that coming out of it, then there is no baltashris apply. And there is toiles coming when Isha Rabbi is burning the clothes of the Cohen, because this Cohen will never forget it. And his friends also. So there is a toiles over here. But the Rebbe said that, Imir Hashem will go to it in a second, when the aloche, when there is the hater of breaking things for the toiles must be from the thing itself. For example, I'll take you to my area again. If there is a person that happened to be in a sefino, in a boat, and he doesn't have anything to eat, but somehow there is a kosher chicken alive down there, and somehow he knows how to shecht. But there is an issue over here. The issue is that before you shecht a chicken, you must make sure that you have an offer to cover the blood. The kriyot sud ish tzeid chayo, or if the pasuk said, v'shochat es domoy v'chisor be'offer. And if you don't have an offer, you're not allowed to shecht. So this person really hungry, and he really wants to shecht this chicken, but he doesn't have an offer. So what should he do? The halacha is that if he really, really wants, he can take a cloth of him, burn it down, and then the afer that he got, the ashes that he got, that is suitable for kisui dam. Now, think about that a chicken you could get for, I don't know how many kapos costing in these days, whatever. Clothes usually cost much more than that. So, burn a clothes in order of having a chicken is not make sense financially. So that's again, it's baltashris, no? So the answer is that the baltashris is according what is worth it for you at the moment. Not is what is the general value, but what is worth for you. If for what's for you now, this chicken is worth much more than the clothes, because you can't eat clothes, and you are really hungry, that's fine, that's okay. So there is a people that are trying to say that because this burning of the clothes is bederech hashchose v'kilkul, because this burning the clothes of the Isha Rabbi is due to the Cohen is to letoiles. Because of that, it's fine, no issue. But the Rebbe said no. The only hater is if the fact that you're actually burning give you the toiles. In that case, you are burning the clothes. The ashes that you get, this is the toiles you need from the actual thing, not what going to be in the further on. This is actually the toiles. And if you are burning the clothes of the Cohen and you have no toiles from the clothes that have been burning right now, then you can't say it. So what's the answer? The answer is that based on the svore that the Alter Rebbe said before, what is the issue of baltashris? Why we have the issue of baltashris? Keshem she'osu le'abed es gufoi, remember? Can also le'abed es me'oidoi. Now, if a person wants to fast, if a person wants to be misane in order of making tshuva, is he allowed to? Well, we have what the Alter Rebbe said in Tanya, that b'deres elu acharonim tzcharish aderes, etc., etc. But generally, the Shulchan Aruch said yes. If a person wants to be metzayer atzmoi in order of doing teshuvah, he's allowed to. Because he's not just metzayer atzmoi for nothing, there is some benefit that comes from it. He wants to make teshuvah. Other way, there is another extension to this din. okay, it's not so relevant today, but the halacha said that if a person has an eved, a meshores, and he did something wrong, he allowed to physically punish him in order of, because it's letoivosoi, it's the benefit of this person, so next time he'll do whatever he needs to do, he'll do it properly. So the Rebbe said, based on that halacha, we can understand why the Cohen, the Ish HaRabais, was burning the clothes. Again, it's not because Baltashris is not about your own nefesh that become corrupted, and it's not about your own toy elef that's going to be risked because what you do. It's about the comparison between the guf and the moment. And if al pi halacha you allowed to make your guf betzar for some reason, to make tshuva, letaken nafshay, that's the lotion down there, then you allowed also to make baltashchis on your moment in order of doing that. I just want to go, there is many things to talk about, but I want to go in short about these exceptions when there is no baltashchis. I just want to say one big chiddush of the Alter Rebbe on every other halacha experts that dealing with it. The Rambam said that everyone said that the issue of baltashchis minatere coming from the story of Eitz Maichol. Ki yo'od ometz asode lo v'yifonecha mimotzei. So, as the Rambam said, and the Alter Rebbe said it as well. But according to the Rambam, the issue with the Oraise, the Ein Loikim, the Inyan the Malchus, which is love the Oraise, is only of a person who actually destroyed Eitz Maichol. All of the other kind of baltashchis, every other thing, it's okay. It's not okay. It's Isur Midrabanon, but it's not with the Oraise. But the Alter Rebbe said clearly, the Alter Rebbe said, וכן כל המשבר כלים, if you breaking vessels, or קורע בגדים, or tear of clothes, or soisem mayon, if you are blocking a spring of water, or me'abed ma'acholes, or mashkin, or memasom, or if you are destroying food or drink, or make it unconsumable, or zorek mos leibud, if you are destroying money, וכן המקלקל שאר כל דובר הרוי לאונס בבני אדום, and also if you are destroying anything that people still can have some annoy out of it, oiver beloi sase שנאמר לא יסשכס את עשר. So according to Alter Rebbe, all kind of hashchose, every destruction of anything, it's considered baltashchis. Now, before we go to the exceptions, where we are allowed to do, I just want to add one more thing, that about actually Eitz Maichol, there is a very famous tzavos Rabbi Yehuda Chosid, not to destroy Ilan Maichol. That even if there is, al pi halacha, there is a way that you are allowed to destroy Ilan Maichol, don't do that because of, there is a very strong words about a person who doing that, what's going to be his punishment. It's actually a AIDS produced parents, a human being produced kids. If you destroyed the AIDS from doing parents, then it's going to be something similar, and I don't want to continue with that. So the Alter Rebbe said though that if the AIDS is actually stop giving fruits, or even if he's not stopping but he's giving very little, then there is no sakone bedovo. There is no sakone even according the tzavos of the Chosid, that you're allowed to cut it. But there is a letter of the Rebbe in Igros Kodesh that the Rebbe said that a person write to the Rebbe and he said that he's worried about that, and the Rebbe said, you know what? Sheva al taise odif, even though if the ilon is in the circumstances that you're allowed to cut it al pi halacha, and the Alter Rebbe said that if you're allowed to cut it al pi halacha, ein sakone bedovo, it's better not to. So that's about that. But if there is, I need to destroy something in order of doing something bederech tikkun, it's not baltashchis. The most popular example is if I am destroying a house in order of building it much bigger, much nicer, and then there is no Baltashchis. If there is something that I have that actually bothering me and making me and basically damaged me, if there is a tree that its roots or its branches is actually coming into my way and I am harming myself if I walk in that way, if there is a tree that, even if it's not directly damaged, if it's indirect, if there is a lot of water that it takes, and this water could be used in a much better way, or if there is other trees that can't get water because this tree is just taking all the water, or even if there is a tree that creates, that makes me uncomfortable. There is a lot of dirt going around because of it, there is a lot of flies that coming, etc., then I'm allowed to take it off. And even if the tree that I have is actually, I can sell it to make a wood out of it, and the wood is worth more than the tree, then it's fine. There is a lot of other kulas. There is, even if I gave before the example of the beged that I destroyed because I want the efer that comes out of it. And there is only the one thing that I would like to say just to complete everything is that the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, dealing with the din of destroying a shul in order of building another shul, bigger shul, nicer shul, on the exact same spot. And what the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek what he said down there is fascinating. He said that because כל מה שנברא באילום לא נברא אלא לשמשני, ואני נבראתי לשמש אזכרני, because everything is to serve Hashem. When there is such a thing, לצורך מצווה, when there is the idea that I would like to destroy something in order of building or having his in the same place to have a better this thing better and stronger in order of serving Hashem, it's not an hater. It's not that you have the Gedolah of Baltashchis and then, but you allow to, because there is exception, the din of Baltashchis is not coming even lechatchile. And of course, we can't finish this topic without sharing the Rebbe Siche about the idea that Hashem, whenever Hashem told us to do, He's doing Himself. So if there is the issue of Baltashchis by destroying a building, how Hashem was allowed to destroy the Beis Hamikdash? And the answer is that if the destruction is to build a bigger and nicer bais in the same place, then you allow to. So the Rebbe said that from that mashma, that the destruction itself was in the meaning of building Beis Hamikdash bigger and nicer. Im Yirtzeh Hashem, take it from Yad Mamash.
I'm not going to even try. Thank you, Rabbi Dickstein. I was asking before the Kinus Torah, we were asking around about somebody, about a yid who kochs in learning is going to. So there were a few people said, multiple people, they all said the same name. Rabbi Myron Sachar. He's somebody we're very lucky, he joined us tonight. He's going to share with us a few words of Torah. Rabbi Sachar.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at such a choshev event, choshev ha'olam. I'll just share a shaila that I had a number of years ago. I have a big schus to learn full-time in Koilel, but on the side I also have a schus to be oisek a little bit in Kiruv Rechoikim, which always is interesting shailas. So the following situation happened. I decided I wanted to take the students on a Sunday for tiyul, to go out, see the country and have a good time, have a barbecue. So I told the students we're meeting in Emerald 11 a.m. Sunday morning. Have a day out. And afterwards it was nisayr to me, maybe we have a big shaila over here. I'm inviting them to come on a Sunday morning to come meet me at a certain place far out of Melbourne. Now what's the shaila? What's the issue? The issue is Chil Shabbos. It's not a dateline shaila. What's the inyan? The inyan is the following, a simple halach in Shulchan Aruch. Hilchos Shabbos. Reish Tzadites. Asur la'asois shum melacha kodem sheyavdil. If you haven't done Avdallah, you can't do any melacha. You're holding in Shabbos still. So now these students, haven't done Avdallah. They're holding in Shabbos. Okay, no, says Chilul Shabbos, so that's their problem. What's my problem? My problem is Lifnei Iver. How can I invite them to such an event when they're going to Mechal Shabbos, they haven't made Avdallah yet, they're still holding in an Isur Melacha, and I'm inviting them to come to this event. Now, when it comes to a Shabbos table at my house, what's the heter? Are they driving also? So it could be they're not driving. They live close by, they can walk. I had a student once, he lived in McKinnon. I don't even know where McKinnon is, but he lived there. He would come to my house from work, we'd catch the tram. For weeks on end, he came every Friday night for dinner. He'd come to my house, and he'd eat dinner, and then he would walk home. He said, how can I eat to the rabbi's house, and then I'm going to catch a cab home, I can't do it, I'll walk. It wasn't from, not from. So he would walk, it was I think an hour and a half. He'd walk home, he'd get home 1 a.m. And then he'd go to work the next morning. Okay, so it's possible, a person can walk, someone can walk very far, or offer them somewhere to stay, generally. So you come to me for a meal, you're worried about Shabbos, you can stay at me, I'll organize a neighbor, something, the whole Shabbos, you can have a whole Shabbaton at me. Okay, so that maybe they'll take me up on that. It's at least a sofek. So that's not lifnei iver. I didn't set them up to do an aveira because they have an option, they have other options. But if I tell him, come Sunday morning, 11 a.m. to Emerald, he's not walking. He's driving. Now, I didn't give him an option. I didn't set him up for somewhere to stay in Emerald, and anyone in Emerald to stay in. He's going to Mechal Shabbos. He hasn't made Avdol yet. He's still holding in Shabbos. So what's the heter? We know the halach in Siman Kuf Samach Gimel, in Shulchan Aruch, it says you can't give somebody to eat if they haven't washed until it's a dime. It's lifnei iver lasitei michshol. Kuf Samach Tes says you can't give someone food if they're not going to make a bracha on the food. It's lifnei iver. So what's the heter over here? Now the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that we're familiar with says, where do we know that you can't give a kais yain to a nazir or an avim min achai to a goy? It says lifnei iver lasitei michshol. She's setting them up. They have no other way of doing it. The Gemara says, but if they have a way of getting it, so it's not lifnei iver. It's not. If it's on the same side of the different sides of the river bank, he can't get the kais shel yain. The nazir can't get the wine. You're going to give it to him. You're the only way to get it to him. So that's lifnei iver. If it's on the same side of the river bank, he can do it. So it's not lifnei iver anymore. Is there still an isur if you do help him? So there's an isur. It's an isur d'Rabbanan. It's called Motzei l'dvar aveira. If I still help him to do the isur, even though it's not lifnei iver, he could have done it himself, but I'm not innocent. I'm an accomplice to the crime. I helped him do the aveira. I handed him the wine. He could have done it himself, but I'm part of it. I'm also chayiv midrabanan, Motzei. So the isur of lifnei iver for sure applies to a goy, because that's the pasuk, that's the Gemara. It says even if you give a avim min achai to a goy, it's called lifnei iver. But what about Motzei? Does that apply to a goy? Motzei l'dvar aveira. But if I help him to do an isur of one of the isurim that's nagea of mitzvahs b'nei noyach, what if I help him do one of those? He could have done it himself, but I helped him. Is an isur d'Rabbanan of Motzei by a goy as well. So Darka Moshe says machlokes rishonim on such an issue. There's a Toisus and a Mordechai in Avodah Zarah that says it's mutar, there's no issue. There's a Toisus and a Ran in Shabbos that says fakert, that's osur. So it's machlokes rishonim. The Ramah says we should be machmir. It's a machlokes rishonim. The Shach there says, I don't know what the Ramah is talking about, I don't see a machlokes rishonim. Everybody holds it's mutar. Everyone says mutar. There's no machlokes rishonim. There's no isur of Motzei when it comes to a goy or to a mumar. Oh, you heard what he just said? Mumar. That's a yid. That's a non-from Jew. A mumar. Mumar's talking about a yid. A yid is not holding in Torah mitzvahs. A mumar, whatever mumar means. So there's no isur of Motzei. The Dogel Miravova there on the page, that's the Noda B'Yehuda, explains the Shach. It's holding the same thing. There's no isur of Motzei by a goy and by a non from yid, a mumar, whatever mumar means. A mumar. You need to be mafresh someone who's b'shoigeg going to do an aveira. But if he's b'mezid going to do an aveira, you don't have to be mafresh him. That's something he's chosen. This is the shach and this is the noida b'Yehuda there in the Dogel Miravova. Does everybody agree to that? No. Morgan Avram disagrees. In Hilchas Shabbos, when it comes to making an eruv, including a non from Yid, Morgan Avram says there is an Issa Messiah. Mishnah Berurah Paskin sagt that Morgan Avram. But there is at least this, there is a tzad, and maybe by someone who's non from, maybe there's no Issa Messiah. So maybe if I can somehow have it over here that they're not going to, they're not going to come, and I invite them. Either they come or they don't come. Maybe they're not going to come, so I didn't for sure give them an issue, an issur. Maybe I didn't set them up, lifnei iver. And if they do come, so maybe it's only Messiah, and I feed the shach, and a dog miravova, that's mutter, there's no issue. So maybe I can rely on that. I don't have a problem to have such an event. Even though it's not, again, the poskim are not in favor of such a thing. It's brought as a snif shel heter. You see, oftentimes they say, oh, and also, plus there's also the shach and the dog miravova, and therefore it's mutter. But to have by itself, to have this as a heter by itself, it's not so common. Not such a isgehalten psak over here. Actually saw from Rav Asher Weiss, someone in a Sefer Korah of Rav Asher Weiss, maybe he says that if someone was in any case going to mechal Shabbos, he was going to go somewhere else, he was going to drive somewhere else, so you invited him to come to you for Shabbos, so maybe that's mutter. He says, no, there's no lifnei iver. So it's a big chiddush. Maybe there's no lifnei iver. He was going to anyway mechal Shabbos. Okay, maybe. Still nothing strong enough to go on over here to allow such a thing. Moshe Sternbuch, people are familiar, the groundbreaking tshuva in Chelek Aleph, in Tshuvas Van Hogas, someone who became frum and he wanted to invite his parents for a Shabbos meal, and they're going to drive home afterwards on Friday night. So he said, Mutar. And Sternbuch was matir. He said, Lifnei ivil asite michshol, if you're giving somebody a michshol, if you're giving them something that's damaging, so that's the issur. But he says a moshel in the tshuva, he says like a doctor. Sometimes he has to do it. My mother recently had surgery on her foot. The doctor had to break 3 toes in order to do the surgery. So, gewalt, chol b'chavero, you're breaking toes. I'm paying you money to break my toes. But that's how he has to heal. There's no other way. Sometimes the doctor has to cause damage in order to heal. So Sternbuch says, sometimes the doctor, he causes damage. It's not called, I'm machshil you. I'm going to give you a warm environment, a Shabbos meal. Maybe the parents will also start to keep Shabbos when they see the beauty of Shmir Shabbos. So that's not called michshol, because in the long run, yes, it's damaging right now, it seems, but in the long run, it's going to be something which is a toyeles. So he says that's not called lifnei iver. Okay, so maybe as well. So there's a lot to go on for heterim for such a thing. But then I saw a shail in the Tzitz Eliezer, he was mamish asked this question. He was asked, how can you catch a cab in Eretz Yisrael on Motzei Shabbos? Usually it's a non-frum Jew who's the cab driver. Sometimes it's an Arab, sometimes it's from a Yid. But if it's a non-from Jew, so he's holding in Shabbos still. He didn't make Havdalah. So how can you get in the cab? So Mami should ask the question. He says he heard from Chacham Echad that he said, Anachanami, without the Shach and the Dolgam Revova, you can't catch a cab. So he says he doesn't think that's true. I also saw some say that you say Shavua Tov to the driver, and then he answers you back Shavua Tov, maybe that counts as Havdalah. All the other issues, might not be enough to make Havdalah. Havdalah is you have to be Mavdil, Bein Kodesh, L'chol, Shavua Tov, L'chol is not enough wording in order to constitute a proper Havdalah. So the poskim aren't so happy with that either. So Tzitz Eliezer says the following, it's a Mordechai Chiddush. He says the following. Let's have a Chakira. Why exactly is it Asur after Shabbos to do Malacha? What's the getter of that Isur? Either you say because it's still the Kedushas Shabbos has continued. You were holding in Shabbos in the afternoon, you're still holding in Shabbos in the night. Until you've made Havdalah, you're still holding in Shabbos. The full Kedushas Shabbos. One option. Option number 2, no, Shabbos is out. Got dark, stars came out, it's always Shabbos. So why isn't it Isur Malacha? Isur Malacha is because Chazal didn't want you to forget you have a Chiv Havdalah. So Havdalah, according to the Rambam, to Doraisa. You have to make Havdalah. So in order to get you to remember to do Havdalah, so they made it Isur Malacha. So which one is it? Says the Tzitz Eliezer, that's the 2 dayas in Shulchan Aruch. Let me continue this sif that I began with earlier. You're not allowed to do any malachas. Then the Ramah brings another opinion. Yesh oimrim, The kol zeh b'melacha gemura, kogoin koisev ha'oireg, aval that lokas haner ba'alma, or hitzom rishus l'rishus, ein tzorech lezeh. So for a melacha gemura, you can't do that. Koisev oireg, that's all doraisas, by the way. A melacha, so to speak, that's sha'ena gemura, like hitzot, it's also doraisa, adlokas ner, it's also doraisa, but that's called melacha sha'ena gemura. So for that, he says, that will be mutar. You only can't do melacha gemura. He says the ikka is like the svara rishona. Says that Tzitz Eliezer, those two tzodim, these are the 2 days in Shulchan Aruch. The first day holds, you mamish holding in Shabbos. Every Isur, every malacha under the sun is Asur. It's mamish Shabbos. The second opinion holds Shabbos is out. It's just that Chazal wanted you to remember to do Havdalah. So they had to make a heker. What's the heker? We don't have to Asur all malachas. Only some. Enough that there should be a heker. Don't forget to do Havdalah. And that's how the Taz learns in Shulchan Aruch. That's the explanation for the 2 days. Tzitz Eliezer says, maybe we can suggest, for sure that second side we're right, it's a heker, but maybe we can say the first side a little bit differently. Maybe the first opinion, first day also holds that Shabbos is out. So then what's the machlokes? They both hold that Shabbos is out. So why all malachas are also, some malachas are also. And by the way, he says, let me explain to you, let me prove to you that both tzodim are going to hold that Shabbos is out. Why? Because the Gemara in Shabbos says, that one is not allowed to do any malacha until Shabbos is out. And then it says, B'ma'arava, in Yisroel, they would say, Hamavdu ben kodesh l'chol. And then they would go ahead and do their malacha. Hamavdu ben kodesh l'chol, that constitutes Havdalah. Says Rashi over there, Hamavdu ben kodesh l'chol, hekera ba'alma. The Rabbi says, HaMelech. This is just, it's a hekera ba'alma, it's just a heker. Hamavdu ben kodesh l'chol is a heker, just to escort the king. Now who's the first opinion in Shulchan Aruch? The one that says that all malachas are asur. The Be'er Goyal on the side of the page. Who's the first opinion? It's Rashi. Rashi says it's a heker ba'alma. Havdalah is a heker ba'alma. And that's the first opinion in Shulchan Aruch. It says all malachas are asur. Therefore says that Tzitz Eliezer clearly, the fee both days, Shabbos is out, stars come out, it's always Shabbos. The first opinion holds all malachas are asur. Second opinion, only a malacha gemura. So what's the machlokes now? Everybody holds Shabbos is out. So the machlokes is how much did Chazal have to asa to get you to remember to do Havdalah? Now, that's a floigan on you after Shabbos. According to the first opinion, we'll asa everything. Just make sure you take care of Havdalah. According to the second opinion, have a little bit more respect for you. So therefore we'll say we'll only have to asa certain malachas, just enough to get you to remember to do Havdalah. Therefore he says, according to all opinions, Shabbos is out. When the stars come out, Shabbos is out. The Isra Malacha is simply a heker to get you to take care of Havdalah. Don't forget to do Havdalah. It says that Tzitz Eliezer, we have a halacha. You can't give somebody food if they're not going to make a bracha. You can't give them bread if they're not going to wash their hands. Lifnei ivel asita michshol. He says, I've got another halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Don't ever give a non-frum Jew food ever. Because he's always holding before Shachris. And there's an Issa to eat before Shachris. So don't ever give it. He hasn't done Shachris yet. He's perpetually before Shachris. No such halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Why? He says because the issa to make you not eat before Shachris is only in order to remind you have to take care of Shachris. You got to chiv the rice of Krishma. You got to chiv. You got to daven. So in order that you don't forget, Chazal made an issur not to eat before Shachris. But if you're not holding and davening Shachris, it's bichal not part of your world. So then there's no issa to feed that person any food before Shachris. Is not going to daven Shachris. The whole inyan that Chazal want to drive at to get you to remember Shachris doesn't apply to him. Mimele, there's no issa of eating before Shachris for such a person. He says it's the same pshat over here. The fee both days in Shulchan Aruch, Shabbos is out. The only reason you asa malacha on you is to get you to remember to do Havdalah. These fellows are not holding at Havdalah, unfortunately. It's not part of their world yet. We're working on it. But it's not part of the world, Havdalah. Mimele says the Tzitz Eliezer, Moedik Chidish. Therefore, the Issa Malacha before Havdalah doesn't apply to such people. Therefore, he says you can get into the cab and take a cab on Motzei Shabbos without having to give any things, introductions over here. He says his Posha doesn't have, it's not Nagea to him, the Issa Malacha before Havdalah, that's his Chidish. And therefore, if he that, this would make an outing to Emerald on a Sunday morning, 11 a.m. They haven't made the Havdalah yet, would make it mutar in that situation. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Rabbi Sachar. We have the biggest schus to have with us tonight. A rabbi of one of the beautiful kehillas in town, Kehillah of Hamayan. We have the Rabbi Rosenberg. Rabbi Rosenberg.
Shavua Tov, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a schus to be here, and such a great honor to be included in such a list of speakers. And I want to say a big yasher koach, especially for reaching out beyond the Chabad community. We know that Am Yisrael stood keneged hahar, k'ish echad b'leiv echad, at the time of Shavuot. All different types of Jews being able to cooperate, learn together, receive the Torah together. And so what a wonderful thing it is to include people of different streams. And in saying that, I'd like to present an idea that perhaps you wouldn't hear from somebody Chabad. An idea that I hope you'll find interesting, not because it's offensive or contrary to anything you might learn, but in that it comes from a perspective that is outside the Chabad world. My name is Rabbi Marcus Rosenberg, and the number of times I've heard the follow-up question, what's your Jewish name? It's very high indeed. And I'd like to answer that question tonight, not by just telling you my Jewish name, which is Mordechai Peretz Rosenberg, but I would also like to address the question itself from the perspective of somebody on the outside. Because I know, of course, this question is meant in love, in appreciation, in respect. I know that in Chassidut, the value of a Jewish name, the value of any name of something is incredibly powerful, and that when somebody wants to know a Jewish name, that is an act of love. That's a sign of appreciation, wanting to bring out the neshama. However, I'd like to let you know that it's not always received that way. Sometimes it can be received as a mark of saying the following. Now, I know this is not what it's intended, but it can be received as if somebody is saying, I have just heard you introduce yourself to me. I asked you who you are, you told me who you are. But let me tell you something. You don't know who you are. I know who you are better than you. And this, perhaps, is something that somebody who hears this might receive this message well, whether it's intended or not. They might say, you know what, maybe it's true. Maybe if we're in a situation of shlichus, and you're speaking to somebody who is not yet shomer Torah mitzvahs, and you want to shake them up, and they are open to hearing this. Just on Motzei, just last night, I was chatting with a guy. He's just becoming a lot more shomer Torah and mitzvahs, and he wants to change his whole identity. He's ready for that. He's ready to be shaken up. He wants it. Some people, it is absolutely appropriate to give them an opportunity to find a new identity. But not always is somebody looking for a new identity. I'd like to talk tonight to you about this idea, I've already told you a little bit, the beginning of the advice around this question of what's your Jewish name. I'd like to talk to you now about the halacha of the question of having a non-Jewish name, or a name that is not necessarily exactly from the Tanakh. And then I want to bring it back to a level of advice. So I want to first mention that there are a lot of names that sometimes get treated like Jewish names, but are not Hebrew, and certainly not in Tanakh. If anybody knows here by the name of Zalman, it's a translation. Very good. Right. Now, anybody got anyone in the family with the name Mushka, by any chance? You're not going to find that in the Tanakh. I know it's a beautiful word. You know, a translation of in Yiddish of the word nutmeg, which we know is a very important spice. In Russian, it means to fly, which is also a very wonderful thing. But it's important to note that these names that are not of Tanakhic or Hebrew origin, they're all around us, and they affect not only people with anglicized names. So, what is the halacha? I'd like to present first the tzad lahachmir, then the tzad lahakel. This is all based off the thoughts of Rav Asher Weiss. And then I'd like to present the conclusion of Rav Asher Weiss on this topic of the halacha of having a non-Jewish name. And then I'd like to bring it back to some advice about when you're dealing, Bezrat Hashem, many of you will go into shlichus, some of you are already in shlichus, and you're going to be dealing with other people who are not necessarily of the same persuasion, how to navigate this question. So, tzad lahachmir. The Maharam Shik in Yoredea Kuf Samach Tes says, based off the Torah, there is an Isur Midoraisa to have a non-Jewish name. He bases this off the words, he believes that there is an Isur Midoraisa of not having a Jewish name. Pretty strong. The Maramshik elsewhere in Chelek Vav, he bases himself off what perhaps may be more familiar to people, which is that in the beginning of Sefer Shmos, we have Va'ele Shmos B'nei Yisroel. Baal Turim says on that, Shmos B'nei Yisroel Haba'im. This is Rashi Teivos Shivya. When they were in captivity, they did not change their shmam, lo shinu et shmam, malbusham, their clothes, or leshonam, or their language. And as a result of keeping these things, they were zoche to be redeemed. Okay? The Maram Shik says elsewhere, after in one place saying that it's asur midoraisa because of b'chukei sem le'teilechu, elsewhere he says it's asur because if keeping those things brings about the Gedolah, then failing to keep those things is ma'akev the Gedolah. So, of course, it must be asur. B'tachlit ha'isur. Absolutely asur. On the other hand, yes, the Maharam Shik has his two reasons why it should be asur. On the other hand, the Igros Moshe, Rav Moshe Feinstein, says, hold on a second. Look around. How many great Gedolim have had names that have not been Jewish names or Hebrew names or names that are found in the Torah? For instance, Igros Moshe mentions Tosfos Gittin Daf Ches, mentions one of the Balei HaTosfos was none other Rabbeinu Peter. Very good. Rabbeinu Peter. Peter. You don't get much more non-Jewish than Rabbeinu Peter, and yet one of the Balei HaTosfos. You could go further. The Maggid Mishnah's first name was Vidal, Spanish name. The Shara Melech's first name was Nunis. Yisroel. Rav Asher said his first name. I believe. Maybe I misunderstood. It could be. But of course, we also know Antigonus, Ish Sachar, right? We know Rabbeinu Alexander, and Alexander has become a very common Jewish name. Sumchus, is a Roman name, right? There is even Rabbi Titus. It's a shocking name, right? Titus, the person who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and we have 3 times mentioned in the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Titus. Now, Igros Moshe says, how do we make sense of the source of Shmos, Sefer Shmos? Right? It was brought about the Gedolah. Shalosh Shinu es Shemam. So, Igros Moshe says, quite simple. One is before Matan Torah, one is after Matan Torah. Now, why should it be different after Matan Torah? He says, because before Matan Torah, what was the identity of being Jewish? There was no Torah. It was all about Shmam, Malbusham, and Lashonam. It was all about those things. If somebody was going to give that up, they're giving up their Jewish identity completely. And so therefore, it makes perfect sense that the fact that they kept it meant that there was Zocher to Gedolah. But after Matan Torah, we've got many things to keep us Jewish. We've got all the Torah and mitzvahs to keep us Jewish. So therefore, after Matan Torah, there's no Isur to have a non-Jewish name. Now, Rav Asher Weiss is one of the few people alive today who has the shoulders to argue with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And he says, with all due respect to Rav Moshe Feinstein, I disagree. Yes, it's true, all of Rav Moshe's sources of all the great people that had non-Jewish names, you can't deny it. You can't deny it. On the other hand, to say that there is no Isur at all, just because it's after Matan Torah, that doesn't seem to hold with some other halachas that we know. Because we know that even though it's after Matan Torah, we have many things, many halachas, that serve to separate us from the non-Jewish world. Such as Stam Yenom, Pas Akum, Chalav Akum. All sorts of things that exist to separate us from the non-Jewish world. And having non-Jewish names seems to fall into that category. All these mitzvahs, they're about having a separate identity. And having Jewish names is about the same idea. So therefore, it can't be that the whole difference is before Matan Torah, after Matan Torah. Rav Asher points to 2 Rishonim, the Marash Dam and the Maharit Tzolon, 2 Sephardi Rishonim, that they also address this question. And they come to the opposite conclusion of the Maram Shik. They were asked by people from Spain that they had, there was obviously the Spanish expulsion. People were forced either into exile, to leave, or to convert, and some people went into hiding. Some people fled, but they maintained their business contacts. And so they said, listen, we've given up everything. We have our business contacts still, and they know us by non-Jewish names. Can we please continue to be named by our non-Jewish names? And the Marashdam says, absolutely. You can, of course, continue to be known by your non-Jewish names. Rav Asher Weiss says, what's the difference between the Maram Shik and the Marashdam? That's a good answer. This is what he says is the difference. The Maram Shik, Talmud of Chastam Sofer, was dealing with the Reform. Dealing with Jews that were using their non-Jewish names to run away from their Jewish identity, mamash. On the other hand, the Marash Dam, he's speaking about Jewish people that have given up everything for the sake of their Jewish identity. Already. They're not giving it up. All they want is to maintain their business relationships. Of course, in that instance, if a person is embracing their Jewish identity, and all they want is to be known by this non-Jewish name because it assists their passage in society or in their relations with their non-Jewish neighbors, of course it's permitted. So Rav Asher Weiss says like this, his conclusion. So we've done the tzad lahachmir, tzad lahakel. Rav Asher Weiss says like this. When we are dealing, if we are dealing ever, with cases of people that are utilizing non-Jewish names in order to run away from their Jewish identity, then that would be an appropriate application of the Maram Shik's psak. In fact, he says, we can apply the reasoning of the Maram Shik like this. Maram Shik's second source of the of Sefer Shmos, Shaloshinu et Shemam, Lashonam Malbusham, he says, when they are changing all three, Shmam, Lashonam Malbusham, that is a sign that they're running away from their Jewish identity. But if people maintain their will to maintain their Jewish identity, then of course it would not apply. This issur would not apply. And so he says that even within the logic of the Maram Shik that is lahachmir, he says you can see that this tzad lahakel is even there within his logic. And so therefore, in conclusion, on the halachic side, we can come to the following idea. That absolutely, for those Jewish people that we meet, when you're out on shluchos, when you're engaging in society, when you're just meeting other Jewish people that are using their non-Jewish names to exist and to cooperate in the outside world, then it would be appropriate to realize that they're absolutely within the bounds of halacha. And I think that is often the case. And now just to wrap this up with a little bit of advice. And I'd like to thank Rabbi Chaim Feldman for agreeing to allow me to share this story of a conversation we had, even though he told me he didn't quite remember the conversation, so it's very, very trusting. So a while back, we were both at a Farbrengen for a fine gentleman who comes to Hamayan sometimes, my shul, and his birthday for Brengen, and I was sitting with Rabbi Chaim Feldman, and he asked me the question. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Marcus." He said, "What's your Jewish name?" And I explained to him my feelings around this topic, and I suggested that it represents this kind of power dynamic, a power shift, trying to say, perhaps I know you better than you know yourself. And he was very apologetic and said, of course, I would not mean to make such a suggestion. And he said, never even thought about that. And then he said something fascinating. He said, my father, Alav Sholom, used to do this. And then I had to do a double take. Because obviously Rabbi Grona, Senior, holds a very dear place in the hearts of all of Melbourne Jewish community. And I answered like this. I said, maybe in the case of Rabbi Yitzchak David Grona, what we were talking about is somebody that there was no power dynamic. There was no hierarchy that was existing because he was venerated. He was respected as, there was no question. You know what? If Rabbi Yitzchak David Grona had said that to me, I would have thought to myself, you know what? You probably do know me better than I know myself. If the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that to somebody, I'm sure He would know them better than they know themselves. But you, when you are speaking to somebody out in the street, when you're offering them to put on tefillin, when you are doing working in chinuch, do you know them better than they know themselves? Not necessarily. And so therefore my advice is respectfully, that when you are dealing in those situations, that a person says, this is their name, you think carefully. Not necessarily do you make the conclusion that you're not going to ask that question. Maybe you do, especially if you think it's a good opportunity to shake them up and maybe challenge them for the sake of kiruv. But just that you think twice. Think twice before asking that question. It might be appropriate, it might not. I hope that after these words, you have the tools to make that judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Rosenberg. And it's with great admiration. I have the distinct privilege of calling out my dear cousin Chaim to share a few words with everyone.
So, good Tvach, everybody. I thank Avremu for inviting me to help participate in the Kinus Torah over here. I'd just like to discuss an interesting topic which I've thought about before, but thought it'd be something we go into a little bit. Not too much, we're a bit late, but we'll go into mostly the Etzem Inyan, and then we won't go into all the Pratim Shabai, and we'll see how it goes. So what we're going to talk about is a lottery ticket. So most people here, I could say for myself, would be nice to win the lotto. Can't hurt, give more tzedakah, you could build a gesunte Chabad house, be geschmack, win the lotto, a couple million wouldn't hurt. But the question is, al pi halacha, would there be any sort of problem with buying a lottery ticket? We know that there's definitely different things with regards to gambling. So would you be allowed to buy a lottery ticket in order to try out your luck, hope that maybe you could strike it rich? So we're going to go into the sugya of gambling, and from there we'll take it back to a lottery and see if there's any chalukim shabai. Could be the same dinim, or b'chlal, what would the Indian be over here? So we have the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Daf Chavdal Amud Beis, which discusses the Indian of a person who is who does some sort of gambling. So the Gemara says, "Hamasachik b'kuvya," someone who is a dice player. He gambles, and it's speaking about people who are pasul le'edos, and it says there that he would be pasul le'edos. Rashi explains the reason that this person would be pasul le'edos is based on a pasuk which you have in Parshas Mishpatim in Perek Chaf Gimel, pasuk Aleph, which there discusses there it says that because of it says that it says Altashis Rasha aid that you shouldn't, that a Rasha is not able to be a witness, therefore you wouldn't be able to be an aid, you'd be pasul eidos if you are a gambler. So the Mishnah continues and it says that Rabbi Yehuda says, Motzei, when does this apply? When would a person be pasul eidos? When would this person, this gambler, be pasul eidos? So the Mishnah says, Bizman she'ein lohem amonos elohu, aval yesh lahem amonos shelo yehu ksherin. When their only business, when the only thing they're involved in to make a living would be gambling, then this is a problem al pi halacha. However, if they have other things in which they make a parnasa with, then he would still be kosher le'edos, and it wouldn't be a problem. So the Gemara goes into this a little bit, and it has a machlokes there between Rami Bar Chama and Rav Sheshes. So Rami Bar Chama says, what's the reason why a person would be pasul le'edos if he's a gambler? So the Gemara says, he says because of an asmachta. The issue is that a person is relying on the fact when a person gambles, he doesn't want to lose the money. He's doing it because he thinks he knows what he's doing a little bit. He's going in there, he thinks he's got it down pat a little bit, and he's going to come out with a big win. But he doesn't want to lose the money. No part of him is willing to give up this money. And so therefore, it would be mishum gzeila. It would be a problem, stealing the money. And so therefore, this would be asr. This would be completely asr. Rav Sheshes, however, here says there's a different problem. He says this isn't a problem because of asmachta. We're not concerned about this. What we are concerned about is we're concerned. The lashon that he has there is elo lefi she'ein asukin b'yishuv shel olam. The problem is like this, and the Rambam explains it a bit further in the Rambam Pirush HaMishnayos in Sanhedrin Gimel. There, the Rambam explains that the reason why this is a problem is because a person, when he's making a parnasa, there's two things which you're allowed to make a parnasa with, either in chachma, where you're chachma, like for example Torah, in the field of chachma, or in yishuv shel olam, something which will help society. You can't just be moshev leitzim and making money off of other people's misery. You have to be doing something which is an asset, which is helping people out. You can't just gamble. It's asr. That's what the Rambam explains. The Rambam brings there a few different examples of this. He says there, for example, how the people would gamble. He describes the game of chess or backgammon and explains how those things people would make different deals and conditions regarding them, make different rules and say, if this happens, I'll make money. If this doesn't happen, you'll make money, etc., etc. And this would be asr in the case where this is his full-time job. This is what he's working as. This is how he makes a parnasa. So the Torah in a Choshen Mishpat, in Siman Shin Aleph, he speaks a bit more about this Nikoda, about this Inyan, and he says that, again, this Isser would only be an Isser in the case where he doesn't have any sort of Amonos Acheres. He doesn't have any other sort of way of making a parnasa. This is the only parnasa. He says not only that, he goes a step further, the Torah in Choshen Mishpat. And he says that the issue wouldn't just be if you were gambling on the side, wouldn't just be as long as you have your mei parnasa, but also any money which you made from gambling wouldn't be allowed to be used for your parnasa. You wouldn't be allowed to use it for rent, you wouldn't be allowed to use it to buy necessities. That would be completely asr al pi Torah. What you would be able to use it for is something which isn't like that. For example, if you would say using it to gamble, again, just for the sake of enjoying that etzem inyan, but not to use the money for necessities, that would be completely asr. So the Rambam in Hilchis Gzeila v'Aveda, Perek Vav Halach Yudin Yud Aleph, goes a bit more into this Nakuda regarding the Isser of Gzeila. And there he says that not only would it be asr because of this problem of this is your main job, but even if this wasn't your main job, this would be completely asr if you were doing it with a yid. With a guy, it wouldn't be a problem. What's the nafka mina? Why by a yid there'd be a problem? By a guy, there wouldn't be a problem. Because by a yid, you have this idea of gzeila derabbanan. By a guy, it's not a problem. And by a yid, if they had that case where you had that this wasn't your main business, you're doing it on the side just to as a side thing, which wasn't really to make your parnasa, then it wouldn't really be a problem by a yid, by a guy, but by a yid it would definitely be a problem. However, that's what the Rambam holds. But the Torah, he says that by a yid you would be allowed to do it if it was just a side thing and you wouldn't have this problem of Mishum Gzeil D'Rabbanan, and it will be okay. La halacha, the Ramah and the Mechaber of Yosef Kairoi, they each hold according to the different opinions, and they would hold according to Ashkenazim, hold like the Ramah. You'd be allowed to do it for fun. You'd be allowed. You could. There would be room to say you'd be allowed to gamble if it's not what you're making money from. It's just a side thing. There'd be room to say that Ashkenazim would be allowed to do it on the side. However, Beis Yosef and Rabbi Yosef Kairoi, he says that it would be completely asr, and you wouldn't be allowed to do it with a yid, but with a guy, there's room to say that you might be able to do it as a side thing, but not as your main business. Anyways, coming back to a lottery. So that's regarding gambling. Now, even though that's the case, still with gambling, there are other problems which could ensue, and it's still very much discouraged al pi Torah. However, with the lottery, it's a little bit different. And there's four main nafkaminas, four main differences with a lottery as to why a lottery wouldn't be such a problem and why it wouldn't have the same dinim as gambling itself. So, regarding a lottery, here there's four nafkaminas. So the first nafkamina that one could say is when someone is gambling, when they went to gamble, they usually don't pay in advance. They usually only la'achar ha'maisa, they lost the money, they're hoping to win it, it's there, it's in front of them, it's still in their reshus, and la'achar ha'maisa, they've lost the money and they're pretty upset about it. With the lottery ticket, you buy it up front. So therefore, once the person's bought a ticket, he has the thing, he's not really so concerned to lose it. It's already been bought, it's already been acquired, he already has this ticket. He's not so concerned about this fact that he's going to lose the money in that way. Second nafkamina that you could say is also not mitzad the gavra, the person himself, but mitzad the chefza, mitzad the people who are running these lottos. The people who are running a lottery, when they run a lottery, they are happy to lose their money. Why? The whole way a lottery works is by people buying tickets, then they make a raffle, winner takes all, depends which kind of lottery, but let's say winner takes all. But because they've publicized about it, a lot of people bought tickets, then they still make money. So they want someone to win, because therefore it will continue encouraging more people to buy tickets, etc., and that's how they make money. However, in the case of gambling, a person wouldn't want to lose the money. Even the person that's losing the money, they don't want to lose the money. They want to win. So on either end, it would be awesome. A third difference between a lottery ticket and gambling is buy a lottery ticket, the percentage of winning is so low that you know you're probably going to lose. It's 1 in a billion or something. It's very, very unlikely. The chances of you winning is so low that when you buy the ticket, you're aware, chances are you're not coming out a millionaire, as unfortunate as it is. However, when you gamble, if you think you know what you're doing a little bit, you're going in there fully convinced I'm coming out with a big cash prize. There's no intent that I'm going to now lose my lose it all. So that's another difference between the ticket and the gambling. The last difference, the last nafkamina that I'm going to bring up now, is that when you have a lottery ticket, the ticket itself, it has some sort of value before the raffle is drawn. You'd say you bought a ticket for $8. Let's say they got sold out of tickets, none left. Now your ticket you could sell to another guy for $9. So in a way, it's an asset. You could actually make money off of it. Now, even let's say you couldn't sell it for $9, but the ticket in and of itself has value before the raffle is drawn. In the case of gambling, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as you have this placement. It's only your money. There's no gain. So therefore, al pi Torah, though there are a lot of people that go into this concept, most of the poskim hold that a lottery ticket would be okay. In fact, we see by Beis Harav, we saw there's a story. There's a story which is brought down regarding the Tzemach Tzedek. That the Tzemach Tzedek, he used to buy lottery tickets. He used to buy one for him and one for his son, the Mitzvah Rebbe. And when he used to buy lottery tickets, the Rebbe Marash, my bad. So, the Rebbe Marash. So the Tzemach Tzedek used to buy one for him and one for his son, the Rebbe Marash. So when he would buy this ticket, and not only that, but they saw that in one of his panim, I saw it was written somewhere that I could show you after if anyone's interested. But it said that they saw in one of his panim that he wrote that I'm requesting that my son Reb Shmuel, the Rebbe Marash, should win the lottery. And in fact, it's brought down. The Rebbe brought down that the Rebbe Marash actually won the lotto a few times to quite a substantial amount. So we see that this actually happened by Beis Harav, and it was actually done. Only that, but there's a Yerushalmi. There's a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe in Igros Kodesh, Chelek Yud Zayin. You could see it on Amud Kuf Ches, where there the Frierdiker Rebbe is writing to someone regarding an engagement of his daughter, and it's a small letter, and the Frierdiker Rebbe writes at the end, regarding the lottery which you want to draw, you should buy a ticket. And not only that, but even by the Rebbe, there was a time when there was a few people that came by from Machne Yisrael, and in the interview, the Rebbe told them that when, with regards to a lottery, if you want, you should buy one ticket. However, the one ticket is just a keli in which the brachas for Hashem are able to come, and it's in a way, it's making a vessel in which Hashem could give you money. But you shouldn't buy two, because it's not going to achieve anything else. All it is opening a resource in which Hashem could give you brachas. So it would be completely unnecessary to buy two tickets, because it makes no difference. So, saif, buying a lottery ticket is okay, al pi halacha. However, one should be very, very careful as to not get addicted to it. For example, it could cause a lot of problems and could be and is asar al pi halacha. So all in moderation. Secondly, even when one buys a ticket, you have to bear in mind that it isn't a way of saying, I bought a ticket because I want to win money, but it's a way of having a resource of Hashem being able to give you brachas and being able to say that you've made the kli in which Hashem is able to give you brachas through this lottery. So Be'ez Hashem, we should all see how we should all be given brachas from Hashem, and we should be able to see all Yeshuas and Gedolas and Refuas in everyone's life, physically, spiritually, personally, collectively. And Be'ez Hashem, we'll have the Gedolah Shleima, and we won't need any lottos to get anywhere. We'll have all berachas b'tov ha'nir v'ha'nigla.
Thank you, Chaim. We're very lucky to have you with us tonight. Bocher Atonim Yoav Cooper.
So the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Talmud Torah starts off and he says that a person every single day is obligated to divide his day into three parts: Shlish b'Mikra, Shlish b'Mishnah, and Shlish b'Talmud. The Alter Rebbe says that a Shlish b'Mishnah refers to the halachas, psukas, and the Piskei HaGoinim, and the Torah, etc. And Gemara refers to learning the halachas with their reasons, at least in a short way. Then the Alter Rebbe says that if a person who doesn't have a koyach yafeh, he doesn't have a das yafeh to properly go into this schedule, then the Alter Rebbe says that tzorech sheyeh kol limudei bilimud hamevi lidei maisa. Then he can learn in a way that his learning is connected to practical halachas. The Alter Rebbe says this is shein halachas atzrichas l'chol adam leida oison l'kayim mitzvahs kelchasa. That this is the halachas that a person needs to know every single day, how to pasha fulfill the mitzvahs of the Torah. Then the Alter Rebbe continues and says, "Vim achashu baki heite b'chol limudei hamevi lidei maisa." This guy originally couldn't learn. Now he's a baki in all the halachas which hamevi lidei maisa apply to practical mitzvahs. Then he's able to yuchal likboyle b'chol yom shal Gedolah l'limud acher. He can set aside a substantial amount of time to learn different other things. The Alter Rebbe then says that what does these other things refer to? The Alter Rebbe says that he should learn specifically from the Chibur of the Rambam and Mishnayos. And first of all, he should start off with the laws of Kodshim. As the Chazal tell us that if somebody nowadays that we can't bring karbonis, we can't bring a carbon oiler, for example, by learning the karbonis and carbon oiler, it's as if he brought a carbon oiler. So we should learn from Dafka the Rambam, from Seder Kodshim, and from Mishnayos, the laws of Kodshim, and once he's finished that, he can continue on to Seder Taros. So the Rebbe in Chelik Lamavav L'Kutei Sichos asked a question on this. In the beginning, the Alter Rebbe said that somebody should dafka learn Gemara, which is the halachas, with their reasons, because when somebody learns with their reasons, they're learning it properly. And if you don't learn it with their reasons, you're not allowed to paskin, and you're called a fool, etc. So why does the Alter Rebbe write that this somebody who's designating a time to learn, besides for Hamevi Lidei Maisa, besides for practical learning, he should learn from halachas, psukas, simple halachas with no reasons, from the Rambam and from Mishnayos? Wouldn't it be better to learn from Gemara, to learn from halachas with their reasons, because then he's understanding it properly? Now one could say that he's missing out on the kamos of his learning, he's not learning a lot, but we already said that this guy's already finished and he's a baki, b'chol limudei hamevi lidei maisa. So therefore it would be better to learn it in more of an echostic way and learn Gemara with their reasons. Now one could say about my Mishnayos is different, because when the Alter Rebbe says he should learn from Mishnayos, he adds two words, im perushein, with their pirushim. And as in the Hakdam of the Tosfos Yom Tov, he explains that the reason why he's giving a Pirush on Mishnayos is to explain the reasons for the Mishnayos. So he explained the reasons of the halachas of the Mishnayos. So therefore, when the Rambam meant Mishnayos, he also meant not only learning the halachas psukas in the Mishnayos, but also learning the halachas with their reasons with Perushaim. But nevertheless, still by the Rambam, we can ask the question, why is this guy learning the halachas psukas without the reasons? We clearly know the Rambam Dafka already say for just a simple halachas, a person just needs to learn this, and then he's good for life. So in order to understand that question, we first must understand what's the chiyuv of Limud Torah according to the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe writes in the beginning that a person whose father didn't teach him when he was a child, when he grows up and is able to learn Torah by himself, he's chayav to teach himself. As the pasuk says in Dvarim, this is the mitzvah asay d'oraisa of learning kol haTorah shebechsav v'shabal peh kula. The marker for the Alter Rebbe is in the Rambam, and the Rambam differs from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe leaves out something that the Rambam adds. Rambam adds, we find in every place that Talmud comes before Maaseh, because learning leads you to action. When you learn about the mitzvah of tefillin, for example, you want to go and now put on tefillin. But putting on tefillin, doing an action, won't necessarily lead a person to learning the laws of tefillin. Now, the reason why the Alter Rebbe leaves this out is because the Alter Rebbe holds that the chiyuv of Limud Torah is not for practical application. It's just Pasha Yediyas Torah, knowing Torah. Now, this is not to say that the Rambam also doesn't hold like the Alter Rebbe, that it's not for practical application, for two reasons. Number one, because just like the Alter Rebbe, the Rambam also holds that a person has to divide his day into 3 parts, and one of those parts is Gemara, the halachas with their reasons, and it's going into the Svara, connecting ideas, learning one thing out from each other, which is lav dafke connected b'negei l'maisa b'poyel. So therefore, obviously the Rambam wouldn't hold that all his limud of a person's day has to be connected to action, because he has to also learn Gemara, which is not necessarily connected to action, physical mitzvahs. Another reason why the Rambam holds, like the Alter Rebbe, that the mitzvah is Yediyas Torah, not necessarily connected to Maaseh, because why would the Rambam add Ve'ein HaMaaseh Mevi Lidei Talmud? That's simply not connected to what he's trying to bring out. So therefore, the Rambam holds that the mitzvah of Limud Torah is Lahagdul Torah, La'adira, to learn Pilpul, etc., which is Gemara. So what's the chiyuv of Limud Torah according to the Alter Rebbe? The Alter Rebbe writes that the person has to leda kol haTorah shebechsav v'shabal peh kula. The person has to know the whole Torah shebechsav and shabal peh, and he specifies, which is Tanakh and all the halachas psukas of the Torah with their reasons, which is a pirush of the Taryag mitzvahs Torah, which is an explanation of all 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. And the source of the Alter Rebbe is in the Smag, that a person is chayav to learn everything, even if they're not practical nowadays. And the Smag quotes the pasuk of Ushmartem mitzvosai v'asisem oisam, that it has 2 parts, Shmira, and the Smag says, Ein Shmira ela belev, and Asiyah v'asisem oisam, and doing the mitzvah. Therefore, according to the Alter Rebbe, the chiyuv of doing all 613 mitzvahs actually has 2 parts. Number 1, the asiyah of the mitzvah, the doing the physical action of putting on tefillin. And number 2, the Shmira some mitzvahs, the Ein Shmira ela belev, you actually have to know and learn about the mitzvah. So here is the difference between the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam with the mitzvah of knowing Torah. According to the Rambam, there's a separate mitzvah of knowing about the mitzvahs of knowing Torah. However, according to the Alter Rebbe, part of doing the 613 mitzvahs is learning about the mitzvah, is knowing how to do the mitzvah. They're not 2 separate mitzvahs. And really, the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam are arguing on the pasuk, V'limadtem oisom u'shmartem la'asoisom. According to the Rambam, who we said added in something that the Alter Rebbe left out, which was why does the Rambam add it in? Because he explains the pasuk of Limadetem Oisom Ushmartem Lasoisom as explaining the Maila of Talmud, that it's Mevi Lidei Maisa. So the pasuk says Limadetem Oisom, that you learn Torah, and then Ushmartem Lasoisom, it leads to action. According to the Alter Rebbe, who does not add this into Hilchos Talmud Torah, he learns that Ushmartem is part of fulfilling the mitzvah. Ein Shmira ela belev. You actually have to know about the mitzvah in order to do them. It's 2 parts of the mitzvah, Shmira and Asiyah. Also, they're arguing about what is this Shlish B'Talmud. When we say a person has to divide his day into 3 parts, one of them is Shlish B'Talmud. According to the Alter Rebbe, Shlish B'Talmud would mean just halachas, psukas, with their reasons in a short type of way. You have to learn the reasons, obviously, but you have to learn in a short way, not getting in the pilpula shel davar. Why? Because all these parts are all one way to know the 613 mitzvahs. Mikra, knowing the source in the Torah, Mishnayos, the halachas, psukas, and Gemara, Talmud, is knowing the reasons. They're all part of one thing in order to know the 613 mitzvahs. However, the Rambam holds that you have to know, it's a separate mitzvah, so therefore, pilpul, which is not negeya le ma'asav apoyel, would also be included in this shlish b'talmud. So even though we find that the Alter Rebbe says that Torah Shabbat Peh, which is the pirush of the 613 mitzvahs, it includes the reasons in a short way. Nevertheless, also halachas psukas, like the Mishnayos, are also included in this pirush of the 613 mitzvahs. V'arai, he includes it in that shlish, meaning he has to divide his day into three parts, and a separate category is Mishnayos, and that's the halachas psukas. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe also includes Mishnayos as a pirush of the 613 mitzvahs. And when someone doesn't learn Mishnayos, he's missing out on the shleimus of the mitzvah, but is still learning the pirush of the 613 mitzvahs. So now that we've understood the Alter Rebbe's view on Hilchos Talmud Torah, that when we say that you have to learn all 613 mitzvahs, you have to learn them and do them, they're actually part of the same mitzvah. Now we can understand why the Alter Rebbe said that this person should be learning Rambam and Mishnayos, halachas psukas in the Shah Gedolah after he's finished Kol Limudei HaMevel Lidei Maaseh. Because since the chiyuv is not to learn Torah, but rather knowing the mitzvahs, therefore it's better to learn from the Rambam and Mishnayos, because then you'll be able to cover all 613 mitzvahs. When you learn Gemara, you get into the Iyun, and you get into Pilpul Shebet Davar, you won't be able to cover all 613 mitzvahs. So therefore, when you're learning Rambam, which is halachas, psukas, without their reasons, it's better to do that, because then you'll be covering all 613 mitzvahs. And even though nowadays we can't do a lot of the mitzvahs, you'll be still fulfilling at least half of the mitzvah. You'll be able to do the shmirah aspect of the mitzvah. And that's only possible with learning the Rambam and the Mishnayos. So the Rebbe said the Sicha in Chelik HaMavav, Shabbos Parshas Chukas, Tov Shimem Daled, which was a short while after the Rebbe started the Takana of Limud HaRambam, and the Rebbe said that a mila of Limud HaRambam is that you're covering all 613 mitzvahs. And as we said, that there's two parts of doing the mitzvah, the Shmirah and the Asiyah. So even though nowadays we can't do lots of the mitzvahs, at least we're still fulfilling half of the mitzvah, that aspect of Shmirah. So we should strengthen ourselves in the Takana of Limud HaRambam, covering all 613 mitzvahs, and we should be zoicha that even though nowadays we can't offer up the korbanos, we're just learning about the korbanos, we should be zeicha to actually offer up the korbanos in the physical base of Mikdash with Mashiach taken from Yad Mamash.